how our £400 million investment in leisure services is going to be paid for in numerous reports to this Council and indeed in the budget papers here tonight. I've also tried to explain verbally on a number of occasions in response to questions and when proposing that investment at meetings. That said, this seems like a good moment to lay out clearly why our investment and partnership with GLL are such good value for the people of Reading, and maybe Green Councillors will retract their previous opposition to this exciting programme that, as well as much else, will deliver a popular state-of-the-art community pool and revamped leisure centre in the heart of Park Ward. The report to Policy Committee on the 20th of January 2020 that approved the £40 million investment in leisure facilities included a detailed financial analysis of the estimated cost of the project, including the cost of financing the capital expenditure. Following Policy Committee approval, the financing costs for the capital investment were added to the Treasury Management Budget in the medium-term financial strategy. That increase in the Treasury Management Budget was funded by the ongoing revenue savings to be delivered by the scheme. As detailed in the original Policy Committee report, the Council was previously paying £803,000 per year in order to run and maintain the centres, a cost that would have equated to over £20 million over the 25 years of the contract. In addition, the terms of the contract will result in GLL making payments to the Council from 2024 to 25. The net payments are estimated to amount to £16.6 million over 25 years. When these two funding streams are added together, this amounts to £36.675 million. The capital financing costs will include the minimum revenue provision charged to the revenue budget for the use of the asset. The charge will be spread over the estimated life of the asset in line with the Council's MRP policy. The charge will commence in the year following the capital expenditure being incurred and will be based on the actual expenditure net of funding from other sources, such as CIL or Sport England grants. The cost over 25 years is estimated at between £20.5 and £22.5 million. In addition, if the Council needs to borrow in order to fund the capital expenditure, we will incur interest on the borrowing. It is unlikely that borrowing will be required, but if it is, then we estimate that the interest payments to be between £6 and £8 million, depending upon the amount to be borrowed and the interest rate to be paid. As you can see, this means that the savings generated by the project are more than enough to pay for the cost of financing the capital expenditure. This £40 million investment will transform our leisure offer by delivering modern leisure facilities, including a new flagship leisure centre at Rivermead and a brand new swimming pool at Palmer Park, delivered in partnership with our new leisure provider, Greenwich Leisure. This partnership has already delivered a new health and fitness suite, reception and studio at South Reading Leisure Centre, and 2 phases of improvements at Meadway Sports Centre to commence next month. As a result of these improvements, we are expecting to see an increase in the numbers of visits to our leisure centres by 40%, improved health and wellbeing outcomes, and tailored services to the needs of people who will benefit most from participating in physical activity, and is a key element of this Council's actions to reduce health inequalities in our town. I know Green Councillors share Reading Labour's opposition to the massive cuts to government funding of local government that commenced with the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition in 2010. As a consequence, councils across England have been closing leisure centres and public pools, with experts concerned that there will be many more pools lost in the coming years. As a result of the sometimes hard decisions taken reluctantly to ensure Reading's council's finances are stabilised, decisions Green councillors continually voted against, we are now in a position to deliver these great new leisure facilities and the kind of investment in our town that we'll see in tonight's budget. Thankfully for Reading, this Labour council has faced up to the reality before it and is delivering for our town. Green councillors who continually oppose without a credible alternative plan would do well to reflect upon that.
Thank you, Councillor Hoskin. Is there a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that long and detailed answer. That is all very welcome. Gosh, there could be a lot of supplementaries. There was so much information. The bit that I understand is that the savings generated will be more than enough to pay for the cost of financing the capital expenditure. So can the lead councillor say why is it that the cost to residents for accessing leisure has more than doubled with GLL taking over the contract? If there's plenty of money, why are the costs to residents rising so steeply, and where is that money going?
Thank you, Councillor Hoskin. Could you respond?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, of course, that isn't the case. There has been new structures of costings, which we've gone through in previous questions and answers, and I think you've been briefed on. And some people will see an increase, but also increased access to different facilities. So it is different. It's different to the structures that Reading Council provided, but it does come with the really strong and wide-ranging experience of GLL, who provide leisure facilities across the country and place these price points in order to maximise income and also to maximise participation and look at what customers want. It is also worth pointing out that a great deal of focus is on providing targeted services and targeted provision to those who most need it in order to close the health inequalities in our town, which are so important to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoskin. I have question 2 also from Councillor White.
Hello. Perfect. This question is on when will doorstep glass recycling be introduced? Green councillors have long campaigned for doorstep glass recycling. This would be good for the planet and tidy up the town. We currently have bottle banks and some flats currently get glass recycling. But at the moment, many glass bottles will unfortunately not be recycled. Please can the lead councillor please confirm when this scheme will be expanded to every doorstep in Reading?
Thank you. Could the lead councillor, Adele Barnett-Ward, please respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This question is covered by the glass recycling FAQs on the RE3 website, and I've included the link in the digital version of this, but I'm of course happy to take the opportunity to go into more detail in response in this meeting. Reading's Labour councillors are committed to maximising recycling and minimising the amount of Reading's waste that's sent to landfill. Our successful introduction of food waste collections has reduced residual waste collections by 30% and taken Reading's recycling rate to over 50% for the first time ever. Glass recycling is an important part of the overall waste management service and is well used by many residents. It represents up to 5% of an overall RBC recycling rate for the year to date of 51%. Bottle banks allow residents to recycle at a time that suits them. A total of 210 banks at 51 sites across the borough, as well as at the Household Waste Recycling Centre at Smallmead. However, Reading Labour councillors know that some residents, particularly those with mobility issues or who do not have a car, would find the curbside collection helpful. We are therefore in discussion with our RE3 partner authorities about introducing a curbside glass collection. The Environment Act was passed on the 15th of November 2021. It includes significant changes to the way waste and recycling will be collected and how those services are funded. There are 3 broad areas of change, which are extended producer responsibility, consistency of waste collection, and a deposit return scheme. The extended producer responsibility element of the Act promises to transfer the costs of collection and processing waste for recycling, hitherto being met through local authority budgets, to the private sector. Government has explained that some local authority transition costs, including where new services must be introduced to comply with the Act, will be met through this change in legislation. The consistency and deposit return scheme elements promise to change which waste is captured for recycling and how it enters the recycling process. There is likely to be a requirement to collect glass alongside a range of other materials that the Council already collects. However, the deposit return scheme is also likely to capture glass, meaning there is a high level of uncertainty about how the 2 schemes would coexist and what volume of glass could be expected to be diverted from local authority collections to the deposit scheme. Government has said that the specific detail of changes will be made clear in secondary legislation, which will be informed by data collected in the course of public consultations. These consultations were conducted last year, but their results have yet to be published. It is likely that the complexity of the legislative package is the reason for ongoing delays in the specific details being announced. Along with our partners, Bracknell Forest and Woking Borough, this council foresaw difficulties in preparing an efficient and affordable glass collection scheme, while significant uncertainties remain about the required scope and funding of such a service. If this council introduced a glass collection service now, the additional vehicles and staff would be funded from the council budget, with little or no chance of claiming back those costs through any future producer pays scheme. that would inevitably have a detrimental impact on other services for residents. Despite our proven commitment to increasing Reading's recycling rate, Reading's Labour councillors are not prepared to take the financial risk of rushing out a curbside glass collection before the government clarify their position by publishing the secondary legislation. The RE3 board, which has Councillor Page and myself as Reading's representatives, has resolved to address this precise question at the earliest opportunity. In December 2021, the board stated that members restate their commitment to preparing a service development programme for curbside glass collection once there is clarity over the strategic status, scale and funding for such a service. I'll be glad to provide an update on the position of Reading Borough Council once the government has published the crucial secondary legislation and officers, both RBC and in our RE3 partnership, have been able to analyse the detail and develop a plan for compliance. In the meantime, the RE3 partnership's recent change to allow mixed glass collections has helped to manage the busy post-Christmas period and will undoubtedly help the three councils to make the existing service more efficient whilst bottle banks are retained. Reading Labour councillors will continue to take every opportunity to maximise recycling in the borough despite the restraints placed upon us by government delays.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett-Ward. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor White?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
My supplementary is, if it seems uncertain as to how long we're going to be waiting for the government to publish the information, and so if we think this is going to be some time, can we plug that gap by introducing more bottle banks?
Thank you. Councillor Barnett-Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe I have discussed bottle bank sites with the Greens before. The situation remains the same. We are always looking for sites for bottle banks. The difficulty is with access for the collection vehicles and also the disruption to neighbouring properties from the sound of the bottle banks. If you've got suggestions for locations, please pass them through. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see another supplementary, so we'll move to question 3, again from Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is on where will council youth workers establish youth clubs. Green councillors have previously opposed cuts to youth services. Many young people say having a safe place to go is really important to them. Please can the lead councillor update me on plans to restart council youth clubs? When will this be happening and where?
Thank you. And could we have a reply from Councillor Terry?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As Councillor White will no doubt know, and as was highlighted by analysis from the House of Commons Library last summer, cuts to youth services in England since 2011 under successive Conservative governments have, on average, been 68%, and a more recent report by the YMCA states that real-term expenditure in England is down 74% since 2010-11. So let's be clear from the start that, across the country, reduction in youth services are the result of Tory government underfunding for the whole of local government services. Brighter Future for Children have responsibility for youth services and currently run 2 targeted youth clubs, Young Carers and Reach Out, which supports LGBT people. And these have restarted since the pandemic. There are no other youth clubs run by Brighter Futures for Children, with funding targeted towards the most vulnerable and one-to-one support. Reading Borough Council do not run any youth clubs, but the Housing Revenue Account has funded Brighter Futures for Children to deliver an outreach project providing detached youth workers 5 days a week and additionally support to voluntary groups to deliver their youth clubs by placing a paid part-time youth worker in 4 clubs. Although the details are subject to final agreement, they are likely to be Hexham Road, South Reading, Southcote and Coley, as they already have plans to run a youth club, are already running one. Therefore, while the voluntary and community sector will be responsible and run the youth clubs, Brighter Futures for Children will be working in partnership and supporting them to do this. Brighter Futures for Children will also deliver training to the voluntary and community sector to strengthen their confidence and ability to run youth clubs. Brighter Future are currently recruiting to these posts. For both Councillor White and all councillors' information, I have included details below of the wide range of other youth services on offer across Reading. I don't intend to read this out, but I hope you will find the information useful and acknowledge that there's a wide range of services for young people, both run by the voluntary community and other organisations. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Terry, for that answer and indeed for the very useful information you've attached. Is there a supplementary?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Can the lead councillor clarify, have young people been consulted about the plans to restart some youth clubs, and what do they think about the plans?
Thank you, Councillor Terry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I'm delighted by this question. Those who attend ACE Committee will know that we had a report that was run by Reading Voluntary Action, which has involved young people from schools, supported by Reading University, called Growing Up in Reading, where they told us quite a lot about what they wanted and what they needed, and they still would like some more facilities, and that's true. But part of that conversation, we've been talking to the Youth Council and others about the provision that we've got and our hopes for the future. I haven't given up on the opportunity to provide more services for young people. It's really important. But actually the voluntary sector are doing their bit. They commission the report, they're working together, they're looking at opportunities. I had a meeting last week with Berkshire Youth, and there's a lot going on in the background, thinking about some more opportunities to provide safe places for our young people. I'm delighted that the whole of Reading community is coming together to think about that and what provision can be made. In terms of those local youth clubs, I don't know them all very well, but I do know the Coney one, and I do know just even knocking on doors, I'm being told by parents how pleased they are that the community centre is up and running and the youth service is there for their young people, and they're delighted about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Terry. I don't see another supplementary. That concludes questions from councillors for this evening. We now move on to items 7 to 11, budget and council tax. And before we start the next section of the meeting, I think it's useful both for councillors who are new to the budget setting process, and also I think we've got a couple of members of the public who are not necessarily regular aficionados of our budget setting meeting, so I think it would be useful to provide some explanation. We are required to hold a recorded vote on tonight's motion relating to the approving the authority's budget and the level of council tax to be levied for each financial year, and that is in accordance with the Local Authorities Standing Orders England Amendment Regulations 2014. I will also be holding recorded votes on any amendments to that budget motion. So I thank you in advance for your patience when we come to that part of the meeting. Additionally, as is our usual practice in budget meetings, I will be asking a composite motion to be moved covering all of items 7 to 11 on your agendas, as the reports are all interrelated. I have also asked the monitoring officer to record the length of the leader of the council's speech, as a courtesy, we wish to afford the same amount of time to each of the group leaders or their representatives to respond to the budget. All other councillors will have their usual time. So I hope that's all clear. Thank you. I will call on Councillor Brock to move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and you'll be pleased to know that in an effort to ensure brevity, I've taken inspiration from Fidel Castro's 1960 speech to the United Nations, but fortunately, I suspect that's where comparisons between me and Castro must end. Madam Mayor, I do love a good budget, and this certainly is a good budget. I'm grateful to all of those involved in its collation, to officers throughout the council, and to all members of the Labour group. And all council leaders are naturally especially indebted to their front bench team. And I'm grateful to all the lead councillors for sitting through myriad challenge sessions and bringing everything they have to the table. And I look forward to hearing them speak about their portfolios throughout the course of this evening too. Because one needs that collective balance of scholarly calm and passionate advocacy, quiet competence, detailed exposition, thoughtful compassion, and occasional belligerence that the lead councillors individually bring. And we can play a game later, Madam Mayor, where we match the lead councillors to the descriptors. But sometimes one even needs the fervent political animalism of Councillor Ennis, who I'm delighted is seconding tonight. So this is a budget prepared in uncertain times. Last year, amidst the pandemic's height, we had to draw on our reserves to ensure we could weather the challenge. And quite right too. Our robust reserves position has been prudently built up to allow us to tackle unexpected challenges. And this sensible approach of the past few years to taxpayers' money and taxpayers' services continues in this budget tonight. Because we have once again protected frontline services for all residents, maintained all of our flagship investments, and are even able to make a modest, sensible contribution towards rebuilding the reserves used. And we go further than protection. We balance caution and ambition for our pragmatism, putting forward new investment in the town and enhancing our service provision across every directorate of the council. I'm quite certain that the Conservatives, who last year bemoaned the use of reserves in preference to deep spending cuts, will be admitting their error tonight. Although, having seen what Councillor Mitchell has written elsewhere, I'm rather concerned that he has pivoted to pure, unfunded and uncosted spending commitments. Likewise, I'm sure that the minor parties will be forgoing their political posturing, amounting always to little more than a call for ill-considered profligacy. Indeed, our approach has allowed us to continue to push forward our investments, support the health and care sector, deliver targeted financial support to residents, grants to businesses, and additional funding for the voluntary sector. I do not mean, Madam Mayor, to paint a picture of complacency, and there is a great deal of uncertainty ahead. Real challenges coming directly towards us, not just as a council, but also for our residents. And it is residents that we are here to serve. Quite proper, then, that we should we should build our proposals tonight, not just on the challenges we know are coming, or on the political convictions that we hold, validated as they are at the ballot box, but also on the real feedback of residents, gathered in the resident survey, in consultations, and day-to-day conversations across our borough. Chief among residents' concerns will most likely be the rising cost of living. Only the government has the resource to systematically address this. A shame then, I would say, that they have hollowed out the state so much that they now lack the necessary capacity to engage in proper targeting of support. If anything, the government seems intent on exacerbating the impact, pushing tax rises, national and local, upon everyone. What fortune, then, that the government can continue to rely on local councils to distribute funding effectively. Imagine what good could have been done collectively across the country if government had trusted us, we, who know our local areas inside out, to construct a scheme more effective than they've managed. All the same, we will make proper use of what discretionary funding is available from the Treasury, and it is lamentably insufficient to properly mitigate the crisis, but we'll make use of what we can to help those on the lowest incomes, as we have over the past 2 years. And although we are raising council tax this year, it is the lowest rise in many years and below the rate of inflation, but acknowledging the pressure this places, at the same time we have considerably enhanced our council tax support scheme to better protect those on lower incomes as much and as fairly as we possibly can. I'm naturally pleased that the resident survey shows higher levels of satisfaction with the council's performance. I'm especially happy that we considerably exceed the national average scores for agreeing that we provide value for money, feeling that we keep residents informed and act on local concerns, and chiefly for the way we run things overall. But residents have also told us the things that they want to see improve further. They tell us that we're moving in the right direction with our roads, but there's still work to be done. And that's why we're putting tonight an additional £8 million into our road resurfacing programme, further to the £9 million already committed, to ensure that our network is fit for purpose for all road users. And people want excellent leisure and recreation opportunities. So we protect our leisure centre and swimming pool investments, invest in new facilities at Prospect Park, and bring forward a large-scale playground refurbishment programme. Opportunities for residents to stay fit and healthy on the doorstep of communities across the town. We're also, as councillors, so often told of the blight of fly tipping, and I'm delighted that we bring forward tonight a programme of free bulky waste collections across the borough, making services easier for residents to access, but also providing no excuse for the irresponsible behaviour of the ignorant few. And residents want real, affordable housing in Reading. And our £88 million investment in over 300 council homes across the town will provide opportunities for families to stay in Reading, and with additional key worker and extra care accommodation as well, to prevent people having to choose between the town that they love and going somewhere else on the grounds of cost. And throughout this, we still maintain a focus on the strategic challenges that Reading faces. Social care services are under great strain, both because of the pandemic, but also due to demographic changes. The government, of course, trumpet a 10% national insurance rise as the answer, but are front-loading that money to the NHS. I don't begrudge our colleagues in healthcare getting what they need, but the fact is that the system will fail entirely if social care is not adequately recognised as a systematic partner. And we, in this Labour administration, recognise our duties by making an extra £5 million available to adult social care and £1 million to children's services. But the Tories nationally need to stop sleepwalking towards disaster here, because a 1% precept rise is not a solution for adult social care, and the underfunding of children's services serves only to harm the futures of the next generation. On the environment, we retain our ambitions for net zero by 2030 and maintain funding commitments. There will be sizable investment to secure better energy efficiency in our housing stock, setting an exemplar as a landlord around the town. And in the next 12 months, we will see Green Park railway station complete, a thorough refurbishment of Reading West, a new enhanced partnership with our bus company, and progress on new active travel schemes. We continue to work in earnest to reduce the council's and the town's carbon footprint, and our work has been recognised internationally. And to be certain, Labour does not pontificate on the need for a better environment, it delivers it. The council also has, in my view, an obligation to enhance our communities. As such, we're growing the funding available to the voluntary and community sector, especially by doubling the size of our oversubscribed small grants pot. This will help grassroots groups across the whole of Reading to instigate and grow projects that deliver real benefits to residents. I'm excited to see the imagination brought to bear, and even more excited to see the results of those efforts. Finally, though, I want to direct attention to what is, in my view, the most entrenched and serious challenge that we face, which is the inequality in our town. We know that there are areas where unemployment is stubbornly high, where incomes are persistently lower, and where life outcomes are poorer. And in the proposals tonight, you will find financial provision for beginning a targeted programme of work seeking to address these inequities. But what will be needed and what we must work to deliver is far beyond that. It must be a truly holistic approach, bringing together our partners in the NHS, in the voluntary and community sector, in businesses, in education and more, to make sure everyone can access the opportunities and acquire the skills that they need to flourish in Reading and get ahead in life. And likewise, our flagship investments in leisure, social care, housing, transport, the environment and more must deliver enhancements to the lives of those otherwise left behind. The best leisure centres and the best railway stations in Reading's history, the biggest housing and roads programmes in a generation are schemes for everyone's benefit and must genuinely be to the advantage of all. As a programme of work, let's be clear that it will take many years to fully come to fruition. We cannot remedy over a decade of the pernicious effects of austerity overnight, and the Council only has so many levers at its disposal. For instance, we set an example again by creating more apprenticeships at the Council tonight, but others must be encouraged to follow in our footsteps. Yet, it is socially, economically, and morally right that we do what we can. I simply do not wish to live in a town that fails to do its utmost to share its otherwise striking success equitably. And so to conclude, we have much to be proud of as a Labour administration and as a council. But there is also much work to still be done. We no longer, however, manage decline, we manage renewal. We're alert to the challenges to come, yes, but we are not hamstrung by them. We can see the scale of the task in our financial strategy already. And to succeed, we must retain that trademark balance of prudence and of stability and of competence, alongside a sense of aspiration, dynamism and opportunity, all underpinned by a sense of fairness. Madam Mayor, I commend this budget to the Council and I move the composite motion as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. Can I have a seconder from Councillor Ennis?
That's me. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm proud to second the motion proposing the budget as printed in the papers by this Labour administration, particularly the section in the pages in the documents on adult social care, which shows a marked increase of £5 million in the adult social care budget. And it's up from 38 million to 43, and further increases in the future. And we were able to do this by careful, good management by the team, by the council officers. And I want to put on thanks on record, the thanks to the team for doing that, for showing that, and the adult social care team and the finances teams for their efforts, who have been working hard for the people of Reading in times of struggle. And I think from 38 to 43 million in times of difficulties, that residents who require adult social care services will receive the best care possible. Madam Mayor, we're not waiting for the false promises of Jan tomorrow and falsehoods perpetrated by this corrupt Tory government of fixing adult social care. We fixed adult social care. We're doing it ourselves. And this Reading Labour Authority is looking after our residents, and we're not relying on Boris Johnson's false promises that won't arrive. And in fact, the residents of Reading would have to pay for it if they did. And there's an old saying, is judge them not by what they say, but what they do. And I'd like to place on record as well the thanks to the carers in the adult social care staff in Reading, working in commission services and volunteering, and all the carers who put in the time and effort themselves, who've gone the extra mile over and above to support our vulnerable residents, working in the most difficult conditions created by COVID in our lifetime. And I'm getting on a bit now, and it's certainly something that we haven't experienced myself. Where they're working with the NHS on planned discharges to alleviate pressures on hospital beds, which have been extremely acute. Working to support vulnerable residents with COVID and working with residents, particularly young, vulnerable people with acute mental health conditions, helping to support their well-being. All this hard work has been completed in the most difficult of circumstances and despite massive underfunding from the Tory government over the past 12 years. And I hope the opposition parties will acknowledge the commitment that the administration has given to adult social care, particularly the Tory spokesperson on adult social care, to find out who the spokesperson was tonight. It's been very quiet lately. Haven't heard much from her, probably busy doing other things within her own party, but I hope she would tonight at least acknowledge the work and the effort that has gone on from the council staff and carers in doing the best for vulnerable residents. I hope she'll join me in acknowledging the excellent work that's done in securing beds in Huntley Place, working with the CCG and Home Group Housing Association, supporting residents coming out of hospital who are not yet able to return to home. We know people are coming out of hospital a lot more now that are not quite as fit as what they would have been pre-COVID. But this is one of the first in the country, this project, that comes on the back of the initiative to use hotel rooms to support patients discharged from hospital but not able to return home straight away. These are national initiatives that have been seen as best practice and really welcome the work at Huntley Place with the CCG and Home Group Housing Association. Despite working in the most difficult conditions seen in our lifetime, Reading still continue to pay the Living Wage Foundation to carers and staff requiring all commission services to pay over and above what most other councils. And that would put an extra cost, a burden, as some would say, but we think that's money well spent. Because we're also about to agree extra payments to carers in a decision book coming up, which would further enhance their wages. That's investing in the staff, investing in the carers that we need to help us support people in Reading. The adult social care team is extremely ambitious despite the significant pressures, such as transformational work with personal care and the use of assisted technology to promote the council's vision of, I use the word promote twice there, of promoting independent living. As detailed on page 59 of the papers, promoting the use of assisted technology, development of the personal assistant market, but also using that to make sure that people can stay at home longer and get protection and support. Reading is also embarking on an extremely ambitious project of extra care housing on Hexham Road and Battle Street.
I could listen to you talk about adult social care all day, as you know, but could you start to wind up, please?
I will do. It's the first time I ever wrote anything down, to be honest with you. I normally come from the hip, but there you go. You know, the actual money that's been spent to transform services, I mean, you compare that to the false promises of the Tory government. But I'm proud to state, I'll finish now, Madam Mayor, I'm proud to state that this Labour Council has invested £5 million extra in adult social care at a time when many councils are cutting their budgets. This administration is investing over £5 million. We do what we say. No false promises from this Labour Council, but a full commitment to protect the services to vulnerable people in the most difficult times.
Thank you, Councillor Ennis.
I second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ennis. And I recognise Councillor Mitchell. Just to let you know, you have 13 minutes and 32 seconds, should you wish to use all of them.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I thank Councillor Brock and Councillor Ennis for their comments. When the details of this budget were first made public earlier this month, a local media headline based on the Council's own press release proudly announced that the Council was embarking on, and I quote, a £150 million spending spree. This, combined with a proposed council tax increase that is lower than in previous years, is enough to make anyone think that an all-out election might just be on the way. While there are elements we can commend within this budget and medium-term plan, there are also important hidden dangers lurking deep within it, dangers that no amount of positive presentation in the run-up to elections can disguise. We, as Conservatives, welcome the below-inflation council tax settlement being sought, as we have long argued and campaigned for lower increases for our hard-pressed residents. We also welcome the efficiency savings that have been achieved to reach this stage. They represent incredibly hard work by our officers. However, we are still asking the people of Reading to pay more for their public services than in any other local authority in Berkshire. This at a time when our residents have not only endured the financial privations of the last 2 pandemic-ridden years, but now face a cost of living crisis, as Councillor Brock rightly acknowledged, with higher food and energy prices and an imminent national insurance rise as well. And yes, before Labour attacks us, many of us within our own party on this side have concerns over the timing of that, if not the rationale behind it, which is obviously to support our NHS and our future adult social care provision. We too are acutely aware of the local disparities in entrenched deprivation and fuel poverty that still exist within Reading, and the impact on life expectancy that inevitably flows from them. After more than a decade in power, though, it is frankly shameful that despite Labour's talk of addressing inequality, Reading remains the 141st most deprived population out of the country's 317 local authorities. After such time in office, the administration should surely have seen far greater improvement in that position by now. Councillor Brock claims that the Treasury support is lamentably, I quote, lamentably inadequate, insufficient, forgive me. We disagree. On the contrary, the government is acting to support our town and this council. That is why the government will be supporting our council taxpayers with a rebate of £150, support that will benefit the people of Reading considerably more than in other areas, given the higher number of homes in bands A to D, more than 60,000 of them, that we have in our town. It's all too easy for Labour to blame the government, and by extension us within the Conservative group, for every funding problem, and to ignore, indeed willfully fail to acknowledge, that it's the government that has enabled this proposed budget to be balanced this year as legally required. Put bluntly, if it wasn't for the scale of the COVID-19 grants received from central government over the last year, the council would not have been able to balance its books so easily. Those grants were specifically used to cover the DENG's overspend of £3.5 million entirely. That isn't a sustainable long-term solution. Millions more were also received by RBC from government, far more, in fact, than previous officer assumptions. Where was the acknowledgement of that in what Councillor Brock and Councillor Ennis just said? Let's list some of them. Where was mention of the new homes bonus element? More than £1 million more allocated by the government than officers had assumed would be coming in. The social care grant, again, more than 1.3 million from government than assumed. The 2022-23 services grant, a new grant of more than £2 million to offset the future national insurance changes, is another increase of more than £1 million over the mid-term strategy assumptions. Again, monies received from government. And the Section 31 grant to compensate for business rates relief, more than 1.8 million more from government than expected. And where too, for example, was reference to the hundreds of thousands of pounds in household support fund monies from the Department of Work and Pensions that the administration was also able to distribute to residents via energy vouchers, while in the same breath attacking the government for failing to tackle the crisis. And then let's look at the next 2 years, when the pandemic support received from government so far will not be available. We are facing, it's there in black and white, an ongoing deficit of £5.8 million. How is that to be addressed within the 3-year strategy? Read closely, and it means yet more efficiency savings and assumed income of nearly £20 million, with yet more council tax rises as well, all costs that will be ultimately borne by our residents. So we are effectively being asked tonight to support a mid-term strategy full of guesswork, one that raises more questions than it answers, even allowing for the uncertainty inherent in any local authority budget. Councillor Ennis accused the government of jam tomorrow and false promises, but this budget, while having elements, as I say, that we can endorse, is nothing more than effectively jam today for Reading's voters, designed to underpin Labour's electoral chances in May, while kicking the ticking time bomb of future deficits and the likelihood of even higher council tax rises that lies within it further down the road. And that, all of that, is before we consider just some of the other underlying issues still facing us. The volatility of business rates relief funding and any reset of the baseline that could mean we may yet lose up to £5 million annually of the business rates that can currently be kept by Reading. Growing levels of inflation, union pay demands, pension fund increases, local government funding reform, and possible new rules over minimum revenue provision that may yet affect Reading buses and homes for Reading, which could worsen the deficit further. My group colleagues will be addressing their own policy areas shortly, so I won't go into detail now. But, as a brief example, let's take adult social care, which Councillor Balston will be expanding on. You will be hearing from her this evening. The much vaunted increase of £5 million in its budget line has not only been possible through the use of contingencies and reserves, it only covers the current ASC overspending, incurred largely because of the pandemic. It's not additional money, as Councillor Brock has described it, at all. And then there's the auditing of RBC's annual accounts, an ongoing fiasco that still hasn't been fully resolved. So far, the extra auditing fees incurred exceed £1.3 million, and they're still rising as the Council's accounts for the last 2 years still haven't been fully completed correctly. This is residents' money that should be being spent on the improved services they pay for and we all want to deliver, not wasted on clearing up a mess of the administration's own making. The question is often put to us, what would you do differently if you were in power? It's a valid question, so let me answer it. We would bring in far tougher controls over RBC's financial processes to ensure the account situation never occurs again, or indeed accidental contract overpayments like the one of £1.2 million that we saw recently. We would further improve the council tax support scheme, just as the recent changes made to it were fully supported by us in committee. And there also remains a strong argument for a performance improvement plan for the whole council, as proposed by some of my predecessors as group leader. As councillors, we all continue to do all that we can to address Reading's problems as effectively as possible, regardless of the funding challenges we face. So for all the reasons outlined, we are unable to support the consolidated budget motion before us tonight. We do care about Reading's success deeply, and we will be proving it by all we do under my group leadership. We will continue to hold Labour to account to ensure that the privilege of power they currently enjoy is one that they exercise responsibly and cost-effectively for the good of our town. In less than 3 months, the people of Reading will have their say on whether Labour's financial record over the last decade and more warrants that continued administration of Reading. We will be arguing strongly that it does not. And Councillor Ennis, that's not a false promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I have Councillor White, and again, as group leader, you have 13 minutes and 32 seconds, should you wish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Councillor Brock. I think you might need to work on your beard if you're emulating Castro. Very, very disappointing. Green councillors want people and planet put first in the council's budget. The budget should be focused on a green, jobs-led recovery from the pandemic. We support some of the proposals, but we also have a number of concerns about the budget. But before I get into this, I would like to acknowledge and draw attention to the fact that it is the Conservative government that has inflicted devastating cuts on councils around the country. On the budget, Green councillors support initiatives like better support for people to be able to pay their council tax, action on climate change, the new free bulky waste collection service, which will go some way to tackling the mountains of fly tipping across the town. Although in all of these areas, much more is needed. But we are concerned about cuts in areas like adult social care, public health, and we don't think action on the can't pay my bills crisis goes far enough. On adult social care, the Labour-run council is highlighting that more is being put into adult social care, but they are less keen to mention that they are also making cuts in this area. The business case for one of the cuts in adult social care this year is called Closing the Budget Gap. If any of you have had the pleasure of reading it, you will have read that it goes something along the lines of, we don't know how we're going to save £627,000, but we will work this out in the year and also make the saving in the year, conveniently after the elections, I would imagine, and with no elections the following year. Another one of the adult social care savings for the next financial year, this is 23-24 and onwards, is called Additional Savings Target. It is £1.263 million of savings in 23-24, and then £1.45 million in 24-25. And this one doesn't have a business case, and so we have even less of an idea what will be done to make this saving. Senior council officers agree that this lack of detail is far from ideal. On public health, the Labour-run council will unfortunately be cutting money from the public health budget. This saving is called efficiency savings secured through public health reprocurements. It's consistently, meaninglessly named to keep people off the scent, I suspect. This public health money is used to pay for keeping our residents healthy. Things like helping people stop smoking, helping people lose weight, and support for people who are homeless. All this is really important for a healthy town. Again, unfortunately, this business case contains no detail of what will be cut within the area of public health. I understand that there were some concrete proposals, but they were so unpalatable, the council is going back to the drawing board. On the can't pay my bills crisis, Madam Mayor, I would like to move an amendment. I think everyone has it in front of them, so I'm under the impression that I don't need to stop while that happens. Is that the case, Madam Mayor?
I believe all councillors have a copy. Do you have a seconder for your amendment?
Yes.
Thank you. In that case, we now restart the clock with 5 minutes to speak, proposing your amendment. Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At least 6,999 households in Reading live in fuel poverty. This is where someone can't afford to heat their home. The Resolution Foundation estimates that this number could triple without appropriate intervention. No one should have to choose between eating and heating. If this crisis isn't tackled, we will tragically have more people dying in cold homes, and there will be a greater burden on the NHS, which is already under strain. Nationally, Greens and others have called for a dirty profits tax as BP announces astronomical profits, this would be used to support people on low incomes rather than the Tory government's recent buy now, pay later approach to energy bills. But as usual, the Conservative government is not listening, so we must do what we can locally. Winter Watch is the council's scheme for tackling fuel poverty. This scheme has a budget of £50,000, which pays for a worker and includes £10,000 of very low-cost home energy efficiency measures to tackle poverty. In the past, Winter Watch has had a larger budget, but unfortunately this has been the victim of one of the many rounds of cuts in the town from the Labour Council. Unfortunately, the current budget of £50,000 is nowhere near enough to make a dent in tackling fuel poverty in Reading. Improving the efficiency of the worst performing homes could provide bill savings of £500 per year per household upgraded. The Tory government is failing to insulate enough homes. Both the Green Deal scheme and the more recent Green Homes Grant scheme, which were both designed to insulate more homes, were total failures. We can either wait for the next government cock-up to arrive, or we can do more as a council. More funding for insulation was backed by 27 charities in a recent letter to the Prime Minister. Save the Children, Age UK, End Fuel Poverty Coalition, WWF, Green Alliance, Faith in the Climate, Tier Fund, Greenpeace, the list goes on. Green councillors would like to increase the Winter Watch budget to £150,000 for the coming year as a trial to tackle fuel poverty through the installation of more home insulation and other energy efficiency measures. The head of finance is in agreement that this can be funded through a combination of the housing revenue account, the delivery funding, and the public health reserves. Is this money enough? No. But will it make a difference? Yes. Will it help people in fuel poverty? Yes. Will it cut carbon emissions? Yes. Will it create jobs? Yes. Should everyone who is interested in tackling fuel poverty in the town vote for this? Yes. We would seek to make this increase in funding permanent next year if the trial is successful. Councillors, will you vote for measures to tackle fuel poverty? Madam Mayor, I move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor McElroy, do you wish to speak now or to reserve your right? I'll take that as sign language for reserving your right. I have Councillor Emberson down to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am truly perplexed in the Green Party's proposed amendment tonight and believe that there is great confusion on their part. Just last week, Councillor White asked a question to me at Policy Committee on Fuel Poverty, and I responded to him, outlining extensively the Council's commitment to tackling fuel poverty, both in terms of supporting residents directly and our continued commitment to enhancing efficiency in homes. I understand Councillor White then sought an officer briefing on the Winter Watch scheme, and I have no doubt a comprehensive briefing was provided. Yet, despite my answer in this briefing, it would seem Councillor White is still confused. Winter Watch is a public health scheme which sits in the housing portfolio to provide advice and emergency measures. It is not a vehicle for carrying out and completing low insulation works, as he suggests tonight. Councillor White and Green Party colleagues should have read tonight's housing budget papers, and if they had, they would have already noticed the £34 million commitment to retrofitting our council homes. These retrofit projects have already happened across the town, ensuring lower energy bills for our tenants. Yet, Councillor White is not only confused, Madam Mayor, as the amendment shows, he feels the current budget commitment does not make a dent on fuel poverty. I take offence to this, and I am sure residents who have been assisted by the scheme would too. as the council helps on average 250 residents a year and always meets requests from residents to help on struggles with energy. To put this into a real-life scenario, the Winter Watch scheme has provided heaters for individuals, arranged for energy debts to be made manageable for families, and in one instance, arranged for a prepayment meter to be replaced so that a disabled pensioner no longer had to make the hard walk to the shop to top up their card. I understand we are one of the very few councils with a committed officer with such a remit, and I know colleagues who have referred residents to this scheme. A resident, Councillor Leng, referred to Winter Watch, said the dedicated officer is like that man off the telly. Councillor Leng thinks he meant Martin Lewis, and it is apparent to me that the Winter Watch scheme therefore gives a sympathetic ear to our residents whilst offering sound, practical advice. Madam Mayor, I would suggest this poor choice of language about making a dent is further reason enough to reject this amendment, yet I also believe that the amendment is unacceptable in that it is not clear on what is being proposed. To quote the amendment, the proposal is for more to tackle fuel poverty, and despite Councillor White's commentary tonight, I still don't understand what this looks like. He refers to the installation of energy conservation measures, such as the solid wall insulation. And further to research, I can tell you that the cost on average for this is £22,000. So if you do the maths, it would seem Councillor White is proposing an additional £100,000 to enable solid wall insulation in a grand total of 4.5 homes in our town. This will not reduce fuel poverty for anyone. As we know, fuel poverty is more than just putting in insulation. And on this side of the hall, we acknowledge the cost of living catastrophe. We know that it is a sad reality that some in our town are faced with a choice to heat their home or put food on the table. We know that the government's sticking plaster of a buy now, pay later scheme for energy bills will do little to help those struggling in our town. We know that the National Energy Action Charity predicts a single person on universal credit will be looking at 33% of their income going towards energy bills. And we know that the Winter Watch scheme puts more than a dent in helping those struggling to keep warm and has done so for nearly 10 years. On this side, we would have had sympathy for a one-off payment proposal from the Greens. Having done the maths again, that would have been £14 to the 6,999 households he refers to. And that would have been a more thought-through proposal rather than suggesting to use council taxpayers' money for solid wall insulation in 4.5 private homes. But, as he knows from my answer last week, we have already offered support to over 2,300 residents via a voucher scheme, and the council has topped this up by offering further vouchers to individuals and families on our council tax support scheme. We further provided £115,000 to Citizens Advice to provide fuel advice and emergency fuel funding. To conclude, Madam Mayor, Reading Council has made more than a dent in tackling fuel poverty, and we will continue to invest in our struggling residents, and we have an ambitious plan for housing, which I look forward to speaking to during the main debate. I propose that councillors reject this poorly proposed amendment this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Emberson. I next have Councillor Hoskin down.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've always thought that the one thing going for the Green group of councillors and this council has been their consistency, which has been a consistent opposition to any kind of plans that we have to bring finances under control and a consistent opposition to any kind of cuts that would have led this council into bankruptcy. But actually, Councillor White has come up with a completely contradictory speech. So at one point, he is talking about the public health budget, which is under considerable strain over years and years of cuts from central government. And in fact, even this year, we have a lower than inflation settlement. It's a real terms cut to the public health budget. And what Councillor White must surely know, because I think he has been briefed on this, is that over time the public health budget has been used to fund public health outcome-focused areas within the council, such as Winter Watch. With the pressures on our public health budget, that budget has had to be reduced a couple of years ago, which is, a very unfortunate situation. The Winter Watch is a great scheme, but the pressures on the core public health budget means that simply wasn't the case. So I actually agree. Public health is an incredibly important area of spend, and as a council, we look to protect it, and we are spending the entire budget. The government have been cutting our public health budget. But actually, Councillor White actually proposes to steal from the public health budget in order to finance his proposal. Those public health reserves are there to exist in order for us to address the challenges of the pressures on public health and the increased need for public health spending and the inflationary effects on public health, and to smooth that over with those reserves. What Councillor White is looking to do is to actually cut the public health budget in order to fund this. We don't have that money to spare, and therefore I urge you to oppose this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Hoskin. I have Councillor O'Connell next to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, I didn't find this amendment particularly confusing. It seemed to me that it sought to directly help residents who are either currently in or are increasingly afraid of falling into fuel poverty. It seems to offer a means to drastically reduce their bills if we insulate homes. And it results in a reduction in the amount of fossil fuel that's needed to heat their homes, thus helping Reading to reach its goal of carbon neutrality. It's really good to see the plans to start retrofitting council homes because insulating homes is a permanent solution. It's unlike, top-up payments or extra money. It means that for that home, from there onwards, they don't need the extra money because they're not going to be spending it on heating bills. At the moment, Reading Borough Council on occasion seem to be sort of actively discouraging better home insulation. And I'm a little bit sort of confused by that. That's the bit I suppose I am confused on, not this amendment. So residents of mine contacted me recently because they wanted to insulate their Edwardian brick home at a personal cost of £30,000. They'd thought long and hard about it, and even though they're unlikely to see a return to recoup that money during their lifetimes, they simply felt it's the right thing to do. They have children and grandchildren, and they wanted to make the house fit for the future and to do their bit for the environment. Their contractor told them to contact Reading Borough Council and make an application to building control, and they did this, and were absolutely stunned to find themselves charged £1,000 to be allowed to go ahead and make these home improvements. And this kind of thing just doesn't sit well alongside our declared climate emergency. And it seems a large amount that's difficult to justify for paperwork and admin. So I do think that insulated homes, and as I say, I applaud the retrofitting on council homes, but we just need to get on top of this across the board, and so we will be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connell. I have Councillor Challenger to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's really disappointing to see such a motion come to us with weeks and months to come up with a proper plan that is properly costed, and we get a half-baked idea that raids public health resources. The Great Homes Upgrade and national charities say that councils have reached the end of the road when it comes to what they can do for insulation, for improving homes, and they need proper support from central government, a recurring theme tonight. We are setting a progressive and sensible budget tonight. This is a motion that is as half-baked as the rest of the Green ideas today. Labour is a party that wants warm homes, but sadly, we have a Tory government who wastes money and enables us to not do this. Rather than worrying about catchy headlines for their next leaflet, they should focus on working with us and coming up with ways to make Reading a better place for all that would make less fun when doing their leaflets. One final piece of advice. They should carry on their great tradition of taking credit for my work and our colleagues' work in Catesgrove for their leaflets, because at least that is true, and rather than these coming up with these terrible, terrible ideas. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Challenger. I don't see anyone else indicating, so Councillor McElroy, would you like to exercise your right to speak now?
Cheers, thank you, Mayor, for this chance to speak to the few luminaries we've got gathered in the room and the millions watching at home. I think Councillor Emberson's comments about Winter Watch make it clear that this sort of work is the right thing to do, that it's worthy. So it is a shame that the Labour Council must reluctantly add this expansion to this worthy programme to the list of nice things that we cannot afford. Yes, due to punitive and counterproductive austerity, but also due to the historical financial mismanagement and incompetence of the Labour Council, as illustrated by the late accounts, which led to additional audit fees running into 7 figures, and for context, that's about 10 times the amount that is requested by this quite humble amendment. So to clarify, we do not ask the Labour Council for profligacy, just some basic competence.
Thank you. And I have a late indication from Councillor Brock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, my colleagues have already pointed out the Greens' lack of comprehension on the issue, so I shan't dwell on that further. I know that Councillor White, like his apparent hero, the Tory Chancellor Rishi Sunak, thinks that popularity can be secured by arbitrarily throwing money at something. And I do understand that the pursuit of adoration is Councillor White's goal, but I'm afraid that such an approach simply does not work. In a time of resource constraints, we must ensure that taxpayer money is targeted to produce meaningful benefit to those who need it. Winter Watch already does so, with no officer request for further funding. It works. And speaking of finance, and I know that numbers come as easily to Councillor White as integrity comes to the Prime Minister, but it is manifestly not responsible budgeting to slap down on the back of an envelope a calculation at 7:45, the evening prior to the most detailed, complex, important decision that the Council takes in any given year. And indeed, with a bit of patience, Councillor White would even have been able to see, in due course, the plans we will develop to ensure that discretionary funding gets to those most in need of support during the present price pressures. But instead, Councillor White must choose his default position of strutting towards preferring the arbitrary to the particular and the ephemeral to the meaningful. And it is to be anticipated from his party, I suppose. How sad, Madam Mayor, that he thinks he is still sat in the Student Union debating hall, and we live in anticipation of the day that he will one day realise that he holds a position in which he must demonstrate selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for listing the Nolan principles, Councillor Brock. Councillor White, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. In no particular order, I think Councillor Emberson talked about making a dent in fuel poverty. In case you hadn't realised, fuel poverty is going up at the moment, not down. I totally accept Winter Watch does a great job, but it's just heading in the wrong direction. So to make a dent in it, more needs to be spent, so more can be done across a whole range of different energy efficiency measures. The officer that I spoke to said that in the Winter Watch area said that more money would be a game changer. They really want the money. They want to spend it. They want to make people's lives better. In terms of a proper plan, I'd have more time for that comment made by a few Labour councillors if some of their business cases weren't totally empty, weren't saying things along the lines of, we don't know how we're going to save £1 million, but we'll work it out and make the saving in the year, which is totally preposterous. This is a scheme that the council runs. It has had a bigger budget in previous years. They know how to spend more money. There's things coming online that officers have briefed me on, like Instagroup doing some insulation, or they haven't done any yet, like the Warm Works scheme, although they haven't done any yet. Winterwatch would be able to work with these different initiatives to get people's homes insulated and to tackle fuel poverty. Last year, the Green Group moved an amendment to get the council to recruit a home energy conservation officer to access more grant money and to support people to tackle fuel poverty, to get homes insulated. This was voted down by the Labour group, who then have been trying to recruit a very similar position for the last year, but failing. And what's even worse, this lack of capacity that they have in the area of getting homes insulated, of tackling fuel poverty, has meant that they've had to return a grant of over £500,000 to the government because they couldn't spend it, because they hadn't invested in capacity to make use of this money. They have flushed that money down the toilet. It's gone, it's handed back, which is really disappointing. If they'd had more capacity, then the council could have put in a better application and it could have made use of the money. That is £500,000 which could have insulated many, many homes. To conclude, councillors, if you want to make a difference to people's lives, if you want to stop people dying in cold homes this winter, if you want to make that difference between heating, people having to choose between heating and eating, please vote for more action to tackle fuel poverty by supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor White. We will now move to the vote, and as explained, this will be a recorded vote, so the monitoring officer will read out the names of councillors. Please indicate your vote.
Councillor David Absalom. Councillor Debs Absalom. Councillor Ayoub. Councillor Balston. Councillor Barnett Ward. Councillor Brock. Councillor Carnell. Councillor Challenger. Councillor Davies. Councillor Eden. Councillor Emberson. Councillor Ennis. Councillor Gittings. Councillor Hacker. Councillor Hoskin. Councillor Khan. Councillor Lang. Councillor Lovelock. I think she stepped out, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mangani. Thank you. Councillor Maskell. Not present. Councillor McElroy. Councillor McGonigal. Councillor McEwen. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Mapufo-Coles. Against, thank you. Councillor O'Connell. Councillor Page. Councillor Pearce. Councillor Robinson. Councillor Rowland. Councillor Rinn. Councillor Singh. Councillor Skeets. Councillor Sakali. Councillor Stanford Beale. Councillor Stevens. Councillor Terry. Councillor White. Councillor Witham. Councillor Williams. Councillor Josh Williams. For. Councillor Rose Williams. Against. Councillor Woodward. That's lost.
Thank you, councillors. The amendment is lost. We're now about to return to debate the main motion. May I remind councillors you are entitled to speak both on the amendment and the original motion, and I am keeping a note of indications, so if you've already indicated during the main debate, I have got your name down. I will next call Councillor O'Connell to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's lots in the budget that the Lib Dems recognise can be commended. It's quite clear that officers have worked above and beyond to find efficiencies and creative ways to make less central government money go further to help Reading residents. Councillor Ennis is right to draw attention to the appalling lack of long-term funding solutions for adult social care and children's services in this country. All of us know we're heading towards a precipice with potentially disastrous consequences for Reading residents, and it's not being addressed on a national level. We recognise the reduction in funding from the Conservative government, and we know that there are no magic money trees, but there are some things that are worth borrowing for and investing in because of the long-term the benefits will be huge. I'd like to propose a minor amendment to the budget at this point that I hope all parties will support, because we all share a joint commitment to responding to the climate emergency. However, in light of the Labour and Conservative groups' response to the Greens amendment, I think I know where this is going, but let's give it a go anyway.
Is that seconded?
Thank you. I believe, is that seconded? Thank you. And do you wish to speak now, Councillor McGonigal? Thank you. Over to you.
Has everybody seen a copy? No? Okay.
Need the microphone for Councillor McGonigal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second Councillor O'Connell's amendment. And I'd like to say that we all know there has never been a more important time to plant more trees. The UK has one of the lowest tree counts in Europe. All councils should be planting and encouraging the public to plant as many trees as possible, especially when so many trees are lost to development. £400,000 over 3 years falls very short of ideal. We should not ask if we can afford it. We should be asking if we can afford not to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGonigal. I have Councillor Rowland down to speak.
Madam Mayor, I think Councillor O'Connell might have still been wanting to continue speaking.
Well, she's spoken.
Well, she's spoken and we had a second. Councillor Rowland is speaking to your amendment, Councillor O'Connell. And thank you, Councillor White. I don't need your instructions. Thank you. Councillor Rowland.
She's finished and she seconded it.
Sorry, Councillor O'Connell, could you put your microphone on if you wish to raise a point of order? Do you wish to raise a point of order? Okay, could you put your microphone on?
I'm ever so sorry if I've made a sort of error in the order here. I'm new to the proposing of amendments and being a group leader, so I'm really sorry if I messed up there. I thought that I sort of waited a bit for people to get copies, and then I would, the same as Councillor White sort of spoke on his main, and you said he had 5 minutes. I just presumed I had the same.
Sorry,
I'm ever so
your
sorry.
seconder jumped in, and I assumed you'd therefore finished speaking on your motion. You will have the opportunity to sum up, I think is probably the best solution, and I'll give you as much time as you wish to, or additional time to sum up if required, if that helps.
Yeah.
Is that the best?
That's fine,
yeah. So we'll move on to Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and oh, yes, okay, got the speaker there. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I received this amendment noting and respecting the impetus behind it in our shared goals across the chamber to address the climate emergency, as I have done for the past 2 years when similar motions have come forward. However, I am afraid at the last minute, which this is, as it has been in the past 2 years, that we will not be able to support this motion. I'm saddened to see that this has become an annual grandstanding effort to insinuate that your party, or your side, is more passionate about the climate emergency, and indeed, by insinuation, I'm sorry I had my mask on there, by insinuation, to say that the Labour Party somehow falls short of that goal. I can assure you that is not what the case is. Instead, as the responsible party for delivering this budget, we realize that we must deliver on a wide range of services, the climate emergency being a very, very important part of that. But I would imagine that you might realize that there is a method to our strategic budget setting within this area, and why this budget has remained at this number for the past 2 years. This budget is set to responsibly ensure that a balance is made in the way we progress in planting trees in this town. I'm saddened by members across the room that indeed, that if this had been a serious request, that you would have not engaged earlier, as we have asked you to do in the past years, to bring your proposals to the table early on. Perhaps you would have understood the methodology of where we are and where we are going with our tree planting program. Our tree teams have used their capital budget well, delivering over 300 trees a year for the second year in a row, a 50% increase over our pre-tree strategy goals. As our tree strategy set out, we are looking to plant over 3,000 trees, or 3,000 trees within the next 10 years. That works out to 300 trees a year, and in the last 2 years, this year included, we have achieved over 300 trees on that same budget. I would think that the opposition would be pleased with the efforts that officers have exerted in engaging in our partnerships to meet and exceed the goal of 300 trees a year. Our partnerships with the tree wardens, with Trees for Reading, the conservation volunteers, and over the past year, joint working with our highway improvement scheme have helped us to meet and achieve those goals. Over the past year, we've joined hands with our highways improvements program to help us deliver and indeed take care of the trees that have been planted this past year. Not a pavement has been relaid without a look as to where another tree could go alongside the pavement. Additional funding attracted alongside volunteer groups saw trees planted in low canopy cover areas, vital to reduce carbon and pollution where it's needed the most. Given the fact that we are planting trees to the tune currently of over 300 a year and meeting and achieving these goals on a 50K budget that was designed to originally get us 200 trees a year, we are spending our money wisely, and our officers are delivering well on the scheme. Can we do more? Absolutely. We've planted in 2 years what we've normally planted in 3. That comes with a price of care and ownership, and we will be looking at the budget in future years after we've worked with the highways teams through their 3rd year of improvements to ensure that we have a forward plan and even step up our plan as if possible. I'm afraid, unfortunately, coming at the last minute as it has, we cannot be supporting this motion. But I thank you all for the impetus behind the idea of promoting a better and more active climate strategy efforts in this town. It's something we all share. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. I have Councillor Brock to speak. I am looking for other speakers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I accept, actually, that this is a sort of genuine amendment, and it doesn't come as a sort of loaded piece of political opportunism. Doesn't make it all the less, any less frustrating, because as Councillor Rowland has pointed out, these things could have been discussed well in advance. The problem here, as Councillor Rowland has also said, is that we have outlined a comprehensive and ambitious tree planting strategy, which we are meeting. and which already places pressure upon the council's resources in terms of staff time and in terms of the longer term revenue impact of having to care for those trees, care for the area and so on. And this amendment entirely ignores the revenue implications. Just adding capital will make nothing further happen. And it's why the better approach here would have been to have had and engaged in a serious conversation. And we are genuinely open to conversations around this kind of thing. But it's just the wrong time. Simply adding more to the capital programme would not deliver more trees quicker. And that's why we'll be opposing this amendment tonight, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. I'm not seeing any more indications, so Councillor O'Connell, with apologies for misunderstanding your the brevity of your speech, I will give you a little additional time, if you wish, for summing up and adding to your argument.
That's most kind of you, Madam Mayor, and I apologise for any confusion on my part. I will get the hang of this, I promise you. I shall go with what I originally had. The budget and the MTFS set out in the papers for this evening's council meeting contain much that is good and necessary. But we could be doing much more to address the effects of climate change, given that we declared a climate emergency not very long ago. I realise that finding funds for tackling climate change is never going to be easy or painless, but there are a number of things we could and should do, given the inadequate responses we have seen up till now, locally and nationally. Having declared a climate emergency, we seem to be sitting back at times and only using other people's money, whether from Westminster or from Salix funds, and not being prepared to find our own cash resources to use to tackle this emergency. Following last year's budget debate, where the Lib Dems proposed spending more money on tree planting, our reasoning for the increase in tree planting is that if we wait 3 or 4 years, there will be only a small effect on air pollution and carbon dioxide levels by 2030. So if we want to make a much bigger impact as soon as possible, we need to plant many more trees now. There was only provision for 50,000 for tree planting in each of the 3 years of the last budget. So increasing this by 100,000 a year for the 3 years of this proposed budget is something that I thought we could all welcome. However, this overlooks the need for looking after and watering the trees that we intend to plant. We need to spend more in 2022 and 23 on the tree budget line in order to purchase a new bowser and towing vehicle, hence the additional extra sum for this purpose in 22-23. Planting more trees brings a range of environmental benefits aside from absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and releasing oxygen. Trees improve our air quality by filtering harmful dust and pollutants such as ozone, carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide from the air we breathe. Trees reduce the amount of stormwater runoff, which reduces erosion and pollution in our waterways and may reduce the effects of flooding. Trees provide a haven for a range of wildlife, not just birds. Trees also have a positive impact on mental health and well-being, reducing stress and encouraging outdoor activities. Planting more trees now will help our town meet its objectives of becoming carbon neutral. However, trees take some time to grow, so we need to plant many more trees right now in order to have a serious effect on carbon dioxide levels by 2030. As for how we propose to pay for the tree planting, we would have suggested shaving 200,000 of the contingency funds for 2022 and to 23, and 100,000 of the contingency funds for each of the years 23, 24 and 24, 25. Nothing from your budget. We had thought it was right to use up a small sliver of our contingency funds to pay for planting more trees now. And if we're serious about tackling the climate emergency, then we thought we shouldn't shy away from using scarce financial resources to do so. thank you for giving me the time, Madam Mayor, to say my piece. Thank you for the comments. And I would like to say, it's not annual grandstanding moments. I know that you, Councillor Rowland, care deeply about the environment. You show that year after year and with what you do on the council. That's why I get confused when each year these amendments are voted down. The work of the tree planting team is to be applauded, and this proposal, this amendment, wanted to add to that, not to downgrade it in any way, shape or form. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Connell. So we'll now move to the vote. Again, this will be a recorded vote.
Councillor David Absalom. Councillor Debs Absalom. Councillor Ayoub. Councillor Balston. Councillor Balston. Councillor Barnett Ward. Councillor Brock. Councillor Carnell. Councillor Challenger. Councillor Davis. Councillor Eden. Councillor Emberson. Councillor Ennis. Councillor Gittings. Councillor Hacker. Councillor Hoskin. Councillor Khan. Councillor Leng. Councillor Mangani. Councillor McElroy. Councillor McGonigal. Councillor McEwen. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor McBuffer-Coles. Councillor O'Connell. Councillor Page. Councillor Pearce. Councillor Robinson. Councillor Rowland. Councillor Rynn. Councillor Singh. Councillor Skeets. Councillor Sakali. Councillor Stanford Beale. Councillor Stevens. Councillor Terry. Councillor White. Councillor Witham. Councillor Josh Williams. Councillor Rose Williams. Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, councillors, and that amendment falls. We now move back to the main debate, and the next councillor, though she may have forgotten her indication in all this excitement, that I have down is Councillor Balston.
Madam Mayor, before I talk about the budget, I'd like to reflect on the hitherto unknown pressures on Reading's adult social care provision and our most vulnerable residents through the pandemic. The staff on the ground, carers, community groups and other volunteers deserve praise for their tremendous hard work and commitment tackling the challenges. Now, to address the matter before us, the Labour administration is proposing a budget of 43 million for adult social care and health, which is 1/3 of the total general fund revenue budget. In last year's budget, after recognising inflationary and service pressures, the books were balanced by assuming over 4 million of efficiencies and 0.4 million of extra income. As we end 21-22, the Council is on track to spend 42 million on adult care and health, which is an overspend of 4.2 million, because promised efficiencies have not been delivered. Now, the Labour administration have proudly announced that they're increasing spending by 5 million, supposedly to address huge additional demands on adult social care services which have been exacerbated by the pandemic. But this is just smoke and mirrors, isn't it? The 5 million increase is only with reference to last year's original budget, not the actual expected spend. So Labour's announced additional 5 million is disingenuous. If we take the 21-22 forecast expenditure of 42 million and contractual inflation of 2 million, then the budget for delivering adult social care on an as-is basis would be 44 million. The proposed budget is only 43 million, which is a real terms cut, rather than the 5 million increase trumpeted by the Labour administration. We on this side are not advocating for an increase in spend because this would mean residents paying more. The crux of the matter is that the Labour administration promised significant efficiencies and did not deliver. Had those efficiencies been delivered, we would be in a position today of having a choice of how best to use 4 million of headroom in adult social care services. Ideally, Madam Mayor, this would have been a combination of reallocating some of those savings to improve the service offered to those in need, such as providing extra care housing for younger, vulnerable adults, with the remainder being released to deliver a reduction in overspend and a corresponding reduction in council tax. A year ago, the Labour administration promised Reading's residents 4 million of efficiencies in adult social care. I'm sure I speak for many in demanding that those efficiencies are actually delivered, rather than just making more demands on taxpayers. We need this council to do more for less. This budget lacks ambition, and Conservatives will be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Borston. I next have Councillor Hoskin down to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was mainly going to... well, first of all, can I thank colleagues for voting against Councillor White's amendment, which means I don't now need to go to officers and work out whether we need to make some cuts to public health spending, and avoiding cuts to public health spending is vitally important. I think I really need to come back. I wasn't expecting to be about social care. I need to come back to Councillor Borston's comments, which are really quite frightening in her total misunderstanding of how the budgets are actually working and the work that's gone in social care over the past year. So there has been a significant and major increase in demand for social care across the country. I mean, I urge you to speak to your colleagues. If you speak to your colleagues in Woking and West Berkshire, they'll tell you exactly the same thing. And what has happened, and I think we need to commend our social care department, the staff and officers, have been working tirelessly in order to try to hold down that increase. So some of the stuff which would be efficiencies, without that increase in demand, would have led to savings. With that increase in demand, what we're doing is holding down that increase in budget. So very much that work's been done. And without that work, we would have seen a much greater increase in the requirement for budget. It would have got out of hand. We would have been in the situation that a lot of councils across the country are facing, where their social care budgets are running away and they're facing effective bankruptcy. And in fact, I mean, Councillor Mitchell seems to live in an alternative universe where the munificence of government is placing us all in this great position, and it's just simply profligate Labour councils that don't know how to run things. I mean, today in the Local Government Chronicle, 24 councils in the southeast, just the southeast, are concerned, could be on the verge of having to declare Section 114, on the verge of bankruptcy. Now, it's the southeast, so I'm suspecting a large number of those may well be Conservative councils, and they're in this position because the funding from government is totally inadequate in order for us to provide the kind of services that we want to provide for the people of Reading. And I urge Conservative councillors to get real and understand the situation that exists both in Reading, Woking, West Berkshire, and towns and councils across the country and in the South East, where we're having to make really difficult decisions. So I commend the budget, and particularly the social care element of the budget, because the incredible work that's been done in order to hold down spend, in order to push out efficiencies so that we're facing an affordable budget this time around, other than other councils across the South East and wider across England who are facing, the barrel of Section 114 notice. And that is the situation we're in. And I think what we all need to do is to face up to that and actually act for the people of Reading and work together to deliver the kind of service we're doing. Councillor Ennis is doing that in social care. I mean, a very considered speech rather than his usual off-the-cuff. I mean, maybe it was... I always like the off-the-cuff speeches, Councillor Ennis. We should commend this budget because it's delivering for people. It's one that faces up to the realities of the budgetary constraints that we face. And on that matter, we face huge challenges going forward. I mean, Councillor White's, I don't know if he's in the room, doesn't understand the public health budget. We spend the entire public health budget, but we have public health demands in other parts of the budget in the council which we support. What we're doing, like councils across the country, is we're running out of room. Rishi Sunak is fast emerging as perhaps one of the most dangerous politicians in this country because he's reintroducing austerity right across the country. In the public health budget, a lower than inflation increase means it's a real terms cut that we're having to face for public health. The one area over the last couple of years that has been demonstrated has been absolutely vital to invest in our people is being cut, and it's being cut across England, not just in Reading, because this is the government that we face. We face enormous challenges that we have to work really hard together in order to work through, not just in public health. The effects of COVID are going to run through for years to come. The effects on terms of mental health and drug and alcohol issues. COVID costs, which now apparently the government is washing its hands on, is simply passing on to local government, onto the NHS. Sajid Javid went and asked for £5 billion in order to support COVID costs in the coming year. What did he get? Zero. Rishi Sunak told him to go away and gave him absolutely nothing. And that money for a much reduced COVID response is going to come from the NHS. And I'm sure that we as a council and local communities across England will be facing those costs and having really difficult decisions about how we're going to deal with that. At the very time that this government needs to invest in communities, needs to invest in Reading, needs to invest in towns and cities across the country, they're going to be cutting. We face real challenges. I commend this budget because it takes a sensible approach to investing in the things that really count, but also working hard to address those challenges. And I urge the whole of this council in the year to come that we all work together, because we're going to have a real tough year ahead, work together to deliver this budget and for services for the people of Reading. Thank you.
Impeccable timing, Councillor Hoskin. We now come to Councillor Liz Terry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In commending the budget, I welcome once again the opportunity to note the progress made by Children's Services. Moving out of inadequate status in 2019, removed from government intervention in February 21, much improved SEND services following an Ofsted and CGC local area inspection July 21, and hot off the press, the fostering service, the independent fostering agency run by Brighter Futures for Children, has just been rated good following an Ofsted inspection in January. I would like to put on record my thanks to all the staff and board members at Brighter Futures for Children and to all the organisations in Reading who are working together as the One Reading Children and Young People Partnership, who have played an important part in this improvement. This is all the more significant for largely taking place during the pandemic. However, I know that this progress does not mean that services are yet good across the piece, and there are still challenges as we continue to move to an early prevention, less intervention approach. Resources are still an issue, with rising costs for placements, for example, not enough for early help, and achieving a stable workforce remains an ongoing priority. It was important, Madam Mayor, that last September the Council was able to provide additional funding of just under £1.7 million to mitigate some of the impacts of COVID, including support services for 0 to 2-year-olds, whose preparation for nursery and onward education has been disrupted. Additional staff for adolescent mental health for 10 to 18-year-olds, and in particular, a dedicated CAMS worker, that's Children and Adolescent Mental Health Services worker, for looked after children, that's the children in our care, in partnership with the CCG, and a school recovery resources to address the lost learning that I'm sure my colleague Councillor Pearce will be talking about. For a further year, Brighter Futures for Children have sought to ensure that they stay within their agreed contract funding. This is not an easy task, but I have been impressed by the leadership's team understanding of the need to support the Council in maintaining financial stability. There are many other things that I could say, Madam Mayor, such as the support that we have provided in our very efficient way of giving out vouchers for school, meals in holidays, the fuel vouchers to help people, the council tax support scheme that all works to take some of the burden of the cost of living crisis away from our families and therefore supporting our children. But I'm sure my colleagues will comment on these things further. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Terry. I next have Councillor Josh Williams to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In all the previous budgets I've been at, there's been an awkward moment, not when Councillor White moves an amendment, although that is awkward enough, but where Councillor Skeets would hand over to Councillor Stevens, and the Conservative group would then jump through a series of verbal hoops to justify why they weren't going to vote for what was, in essence, an entirely Conservative budget led by the Conservative government, despite it coming from Labour councillors. I guess that's not happening anymore, and I sincerely hope that it comes as a relief to Councillor Stevens not to have to do that this evening. I think we should all be lucky enough to find a place we call home, wherever that is. For all of us here, Reading is our home, and Reading has not been well served by this or previous budgets. Each year, many of us on this side used to listen with dismay as lead councillors pronounced that their budget, at the same time as it cut jobs, cut services and cut spending, showed their ambitions for Reading. For years, lead councillors claimed that they were narrowing the gap, when even a cursory glance at the budget would tell you that the cuts would do just the opposite. And now what do we see? In these budget papers, we see the latest index of deprivation shows there are now 5 areas in Reading that are in the 10% most deprived nationally, compared to just 2 in 2015. Far from narrowing, the gap has widened. And those figures were just taken pre-COVID. They cannot be blamed on the pandemic. Living in a deprived area means you're deprived of those essential things to life, to community, to living well, to growing up well. Long-term deprivation is devastating. Public services gone, shops gone, houses empty, deprived of decent job opportunities, bills soaring. And in the place where we call home, this is getting worse. This evening we've watched while councillors who are elected to represent the people of Reading have voted against more money to help with people's freezing homes. As Councillor White made clear earlier, this is a budget full of holes. It is not planned. It has many uncertainties. Finances are not in control, and we'll be voting against it this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I next have Councillor Ashley Pearce to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be speaking on the education aspect of the budget. As we all know, education is so important for a child's start in life. I'm proud of the Council and Brighter Futures for Children's work and future plans for education in Reading. The first priority in education is ensuring that every child gets a school place. This has again been achieved with 90% of secondary applicants getting one of their top 3 preferences and 95% of primary applicants getting one of their top 3. More parents are also choosing to keep their children within Reading schools. Plans continue to increase capacity in the secondary sector, with River Academy to be run by Maiden Early Progressing, and some of our current schools also agreeing to greater pupil numbers. I also have to comment on and praise the incredible response and hard work of everyone involved in responding to the COVID crisis for schools. From governors to pupils, all school staff and parents who helped ensure our students were still able to access high-quality education. Thousands of school meals vouchers were provided, the Holiday Activity Fund provided activities and food to the most in need, with the final tranche of this money coming this week. I'd like to thank again everyone involved for their huge efforts in this. Special educational needs has and continues to be a huge area of work. Our improvement here has been recognised by Ofsted in last year's monitoring visit, as well as winning the award for Best SEND Local Offer. Our conversion rate for education, health and care plans within 20 weeks regularly comes in around 90%, which is one of the highest rates in the country. We continue to increase our capacity and provision within SEND. Additional provision has opened at Coley Primary and Ridgeway Primary. This month it was agreed for the Avenue to expand, and the relocation of Phoenix College to become the Hamilton Centre is almost complete. One of the biggest pieces of work in this area is the planned new school for 150 pupils based in Winnersh, shared between ourselves and Wokingham, called the Oak Tree Academy. And here I make a public plea to the Department for Education. Myself, my Conservative colleagues in Wokingham, Reading East MP Matt Rodder and Maidenhead MP Theresa May have all made representation to the Education Secretary to sort the delay in opening of this school. This DFE project is delayed, but they have not yet confirmed when the school will open. This is not good enough for our young people or their families that are awaiting suitable local provision. The issue needs to be resolved, and quickly. On to some more positive news. Our schools in Reading continue to be recognised for their good work by Ofsted, with 93% of our schools in primary and secondary rated as good or outstanding. The figure is even higher if we include just the maintained sector. Our most recent positive Ofsted outcomes have come from Whitley Park, Reading Girls and St Martin's. Congratulations for everyone that's just been through those. The last year has also seen a less tangible but no less important improvement in the Council and Brighter Futures for Children's reputation amongst service users, schools, parents, the local community and other local authorities. One of the most important reasons in this is the co-production being used to plan our provision. All of this, as per pupil spending from a Tory government, is lower now than in 2010. There are over 20,000 school pupils in Reading, with more obviously added year on year. That is thousands and thousands of pupils that have been shortchanged of a properly funded education over the last decade from successive Tory governments. That's the real face of the Tory party. The party that once snatched milk from our kids now snatches properly funded education from them. But on this side, we will do all we can to ensure they don't succeed and ensure our kids flourish in education in Reading.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I have Councillor Emberson to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I first apologise that you have had the pleasure of hearing me twice this evening, but I will try and be short. I, like colleagues, would like to take this opportunity to pass my thanks to staff across the organisation for their efforts in yet another unprecedented year for the Council. I am proud of the budget we have proposed this evening, and I am pleased to be able to talk to the housing element. Looking first to our housing needs team, we all know the excellent work they have carried out this year in supporting those rough sleeping and at risk of homelessness. We supported over 260 residents regularly during the pandemic, delivering hot meals on a daily basis and providing emergency accommodation. We have 40 new pods with 24-hour wraparound support, and with the budgetary commitments proposed tonight, we hope to continue the important work on homelessness in conjunction with our amazing partners across the town. Also sitting under the housing needs team, we have the rent guarantee scheme team, who advise and help residents across our town to a secure home. We know the private sector can be expensive for residents, and this scheme goes a long way in setting residents up. We also know that there are rogue landlords in our town who do not meet the standard of housing we expect, and our housing team help to protect the right and safety of residents who rent with private landlords. We have successfully prosecuted landlords who do not meet the standard of accommodation which we expect, and we also show our commitment to high quality housing for all of Reading's renters by committing to launch the Rent with Confidence website shortly. This will enable prospective tenants the chance to let homes with confidence, knowing that landlords are signed up to the council scheme. Moving on, we have our allocations team who support those applying for council homes, and I know many look forward to the implementation of our amended housing allocation scheme. This will give priority to existing tenants as well as key workers, toughen our approach to antisocial behaviour and dedicate a register for our disabled residents to ease their applications. Councillor Balsden earlier referred to supported housing in terms of adult social care, and I'm sure she will have duly noted that we have a budgetary commitment on closely linked adult social care and housing projects, which myself and Councillor Ennis look forward to coming to fruition. Our tenant services team work with the existing tenants offering housing support, and again, I'm pleased on our commitment to implement something further for our tenants, and in this instance, it's new technology to make communication between the council and tenants easier, whilst holding this council's continued commitment to acknowledging digital inclusion to make sure no resident is left behind by any technological advance. Our housing property services team have been busy with repairs, maintenance and major projects such as the installation of net zero carbon initiatives, as noted in my comments earlier this evening. And we continue to have that provision in the budget, and it is something we are very much committed to. We continue to serve communities with community centres maintaining the housing revenue account and a commitment to youth outreach, as Councillor Terry noted in her response to Councillor White this evening. Our strategic housing arm goes from strength to strength, delivering new council homes for families, key workers and provision for sheltered housing. Not only do we plan to build 300 new homes in the next 3 years, but we were also awarded LGA funding to enable the unlocking of future plans. Our innovative use of small pockets of disused land alongside larger projects had made it possible to unlock housing opportunities for all in Reading. Indeed, the Council awarded Home Builder of the Year at the National Housing Awards on our plans proposed, which form part of this budget this evening. We also speak with developers in negotiations of affordable housing to ensure the local plan is upheld with a commitment of 30% affordable homes on new larger developments. The housing service has faced real challenges with the pandemic, as has been the case for the Council as a whole, as other lead councillors have noted tonight. Business as usual in itself is a huge task. Yet housing officers continue to maintain services for residents and implement forward-thinking of initiatives for our town, which are shown in these budget papers this evening, both in terms of council stock and looking at the private sector. Madam Mayor, the housing portfolio is huge and encompasses so much for residents across our town, and we could be here all night. But my thanks to all officers involved in making this ambitious budget possible. I support this motion as moved by Councillor Brock and seconded by Councillor Ennis.
Thank you, Councillor Emerson. It's a pleasure to hear you twice, of course. And I now have Councillor Raj Singh to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak today. I'll be speaking against the proposed increase in council tax by the Reading Labour Administration. While we agree the council needs to balance its budget, meets its fiscal deficit and build reserves, we disagree that Reading Labour Administration should burden the back of hard-working Reading residents. Instead, council should generate income and find further efficiencies. Over the years, Madam Mayor, lazy leadership of Labour administration missed the opportunities to offset funding reductions by generating new income through a range of strategies that offer fiscal sustainability and prudence. Madam Mayor, the Labour administration may ask, what would you do differently? So let me give you a few examples what Reading Conservatives will do differently for the Reading residents. First thing we'll do, Madam Mayor, invest in technology. To give you an example, councils in Barnet and Deptford using the system called Waste Watch Camps, which is completely end-to-end solutions where part of the process is managed with little to no input needed from local authorities, and it's stretched resources and saving thousands of pounds, which makes it financially beneficial too. Several councils, Madam Mayor, also using satellite imaging or fitted sensors under the waste trucks to inspect roads. To give you an example, Blackpool Council has fixed more than 5,000 potholes just under £450,000, which would have costed 1.5 million using traditional methods. Councillor Tony Page may say that we already pay less than 1/3 of the traditional cost. Having said that, the current methods to detect and repair potholes are labor-intensive, slow, unsafe, and costly to the environment. To give you some more examples, private advertising. The General Power of Competence for Councils in Localism Act of 2011 makes it easier for council to undertake imaginative joint ventures. Example, Birmingham City Council has established a company to trade back office services with other public bodies and made more than 300,000 income through trading its legal services. Private advertising on council websites and on payslips. For example, Nottingham Council website attracts about 200,000 impressions a month and able to generate thousands of pounds per month. Lead councils allow business to advertise on its payslips, which reaches audience of 35,000. Sharing senior staff. Combine chief executives with other councils, other public authorities. For example, Brackland and South Holland District Council shares their management team, including chief executives, aiming to reduce senior management overhead by 35%. The estimated ongoing saving is 1.1 million per year. Cambridgeshire and Nottinghamshire County Council achieved savings of 3.8 million from a budget of 83 million in a single year by merging management positions. I don't know these are conservative councils or Labour, but they're doing a fantastic job. So, coming back to Madam Mayor, I'm afraid instead of thinking out of the box, leader of the council, Councillor Jason Brock, is busy emulating Fidel Castro. On one hand, he's cutting down essential services, shutting down public toilets. On other hand, he's doubling his allowance, which he did in 2019. The picture he paints of is not good. The picture he paints is of complacent and callous leadership. To conclude, Madam Mayor, the inconvenient truth is the ideology of raising taxes should not dictate the council priorities, and you cannot secure economic success of Reading by saddling its residents with high taxes and premium fees or parceling out the blame to the central government. You need to think out of the box, cut wastage, think about the Reading residents first, generate income with prudent investments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. I now have Councillor Barnett-Ward ready to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I want to echo my colleagues' thanks to officers for their hard work in compiling this budget, as well as their commitment to delivering services for Reading's residents. The Neighbourhoods and Communities portfolio under Labour is delivering a safer, cleaner and greener Reading for every resident of this town. Councillor Mitchell spoke about 10 years of Labour administration in Reading. His predictable criticisms ignored the fact that his party, the Party of Austerity, has been in government since 2010. Over the last 12 years, Reading's community funding has been subjected to cut after Tory cut, and sadly, Madam Mayor, this year is no exception. The new Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner is halving Reading's Community Safety Partnership funding, halving our town's funding while doubling the amount he gives to Wokingham, a borough whose crime rate is half ours, but whose council is led by the political party that he belongs to. Reading's Conservative councillors supported this cut, but I do not accept the Police and Crime Commissioner's attempt to justify taking £250,000 a year away from Reading, and Reading Labour will continue to fight this on behalf of everyone in our town. Despite this brutal cut to community safety initiatives in our town, this Labour Council is pushing forward with initiatives to make our community stronger and safer. We've introduced Reportable, which enables victims and witnesses of antisocial behaviour to report incidents through a convenient mobile phone app. We've introduced problem-solving patch meetings, bringing together a wide range of partner agencies to ensure a joined-up approach to area-specific issues such as drug dealing, aggressive begging, antisocial behaviour and motorbike nuisance. We have successfully secured Safer Streets 2 funding for areas in Coley, Abbey and Battle wards. The Safer Streets project will include an increase in mobile CCTV, enhanced burglary packs, projects to design out crime and targeted weeks of action. We are taking a pragmatic approach to illegal encampments in Reading, seeking to protect our parks and open spaces while providing legal stopping spaces for travellers. That is why this council will fund a transit site in the borough and is calling on neighbouring authorities to work with us on founding a further, larger site so we can end illegal encampments in our town. Even in the face of brutal Tory funding cuts, this Labour Council is making Reading safer. We know our residents care about the cleanliness and appearance of our town. It's vital for pride in where you live. We're streamlining costs by amalgamating the parks and open spaces and street cleansing teams to form the new street scene service. This service has recycled 850 tonnes of sweepings from the streets of Reading this year and achieved a 96% EPA high standard for our streets. But we aren't resting on our laurels. Thanks to work by Labour councillors, this council is investing £75,000 not only in clearing existing graffiti, but also in providing up to 500 further removals from private properties entirely free of charge. As Councillor Challenger alluded to earlier, that came from his work in Catesgrove, no matter who else tries to claim it. Since the beginning of this financial year, our recycling enforcement team have successfully prosecuted 12 court cases for environmental offences and issued over 300 fixed penalty notices for fly tipping, littering and trade waste violations. These actions have raised £37,000, which we've invested in CCTV kits to further increase our enforcement against fly tipping. In the coming year, we'll be bringing forward more measures to tackle environmental crime. This Labour Council is delivering a cleaner Reading that we can all take pride in. It's now 3 years since Reading's Labour Council has proposed the declaration of a climate emergency. Every portfolio area is contributing to the greening, with a small g, of our town. Reading's first electric refuse collection vehicle is on our streets and will be followed by many more. Reading's current recycling rate is 52.6%. That's up from 32% in 2021. It's a huge leap, and I want to thank every resident for playing their part in greening our waste management. 59,000 properties across the borough now have a weekly food waste collection. All houses and some flats now receive the service, with the remaining flats being added in the coming year. This is already diverting over 7.5 tonnes of food waste from landfill a year, generating enough power for 730 homes, with the amount set to climb even higher in the coming year. We've brought in new recycling and reuse schemes through the RE3 partnership. The rigid plastics recycling scheme and paint and other reuse schemes are saving a further 600 tonnes of waste from landfill. These schemes, together with the food waste collections, are not only reusing and conserving precious resources, but they are also saving this council over £1 million a year. That saving means that despite the damage done to council funding by the Tory government, this Labour council is proposing a new, free, bulky waste collection service for Reading's residents. This budget provides for 80 collections every week. The service, collecting up to 400 items a week, will be entirely free of charge and available to any Reading resident, making it easier for residents to dispose of large items. This scheme is not only a recognition of residents' contribution to making Reading greener, but part of our commitment to reducing car dependency in our borough.
Councillor Barnett-Ward, could you sum up?
Madam Mayor, this budget provides for a safer, cleaner and greener Reading, and I call on all members to support it.
Thank you. I now call Councillor McEwen to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to speak in support of this budget, and I'd like to start by thanking all of the staff across the council who've continued to work so incredibly hard over the past year. I would now like just to outline some of the achievements and initiatives which have taken place over the year. The new digital transformation strategy aims to streamline services, deliver efficiencies, which I'm sure will be of interest to Councillor Singh, and improve customer access to services, always providing a clear, consistent approach to the way the Council communicates and provides information. The social value policy aims to ensure that the Council gets the best value from all of its procurements and contracts. Just a couple of examples of some of the contracts completed. Broadband is connected to community properties in an attempt to address digital inclusion where connectivity is an issue. The Faster Future programme, which is a 12-week career training programme for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, all will benefit our residents. The Council's Revenue and Benefits team have continued to support local residents and businesses. It's worth noting that £52 million was paid in support grants was paid to local businesses. Also, the Council Tax Support Scheme, which was launched this year. The council tax collection rates have remained high, ensuring we can continue to carry on running all of our services very efficiently. In addition, we have the transition to our new ICT operating model and improved our cybersecurity. Our successful apprenticeship scheme continues. We currently have a wide range of apprenticeships from across the organisation, with apprenticeships covering all levels, from entry level to managerial. So before I finish, I would again like to thank all staff who have worked so hard to support all of our residents. Reading Borough Council staff have been supporting families. It's been seen throughout the pandemic. 14,000 families and individuals provided with energy and food, with the council working in partnership with the voluntary community sector and Brighter Futures for Children. More recently, during the Roe Court fire, and again during the storm which affected so many over the weekend. To conclude, Madam Mayor, I support this budget.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. I next have Councillor Robinson.
My budget speech isn't going to be political or negative, in that I believe children's services is too important a subject to turn into a political football. But my speech is one that I hope will convey a positive message and be thought-provoking. On children's services, we all remember only too well a few years back when we were placed into special measures and drastic action was needed to turn things around. So the birth of Better Futures for Children came about. Since then, we have seen a great deal of good progress and so many great improvements in this area. And our personal thanks, as always, to Deborah Glassbrook and her team for the continued efforts they make each and every day on behalf of the children in our borough. I will also say a special thanks and pay tribute to my opposite, Councillor Liz Terry, who has excelled in her role as lead member for Children's Services. Many might say that being an opposition councillor is easy, in that we can say and promise the world in terms of what we would do if we were to gain power. But from my perspective, I can honestly say I would do nothing different than what Councillor Terry has done. She is someone that shows humanity and care and is passionate about what she does and what she believes in. And those are key and admirable qualities needed to lead on this vital portfolio. Whilst great improvements have been made in the management and delivery of children's services in Reading, including an encouraging Ofsted report on the approach to SEND back in July and another one in January this year, we need to be mindful that we are far from where we need to be and still have a long way to go. So this isn't a time where we can sit back on our laurels and pat each other on the back. It is imperative that we continually improve and learn from experience and the mistakes made so that our services get better, processes become better honed and fine-tuned with each and every passing day, and that we continue to listen to our children and proactively act in their best interests. Controls on finance as well have been the subject of improvement, and Brighter Futures have taken this as a priority in managing their budgets wisely and well, but with no detriment to their mission. As I draw to the end of my speech, I just wanted to put a few thoughts out there. Many of you will recall the song, The Greatest Love of All. It became a popular hit for Whitney Houston back in 1985. The reason I'm mentioning this is because of the lyrics for the first verse, which I'll remind you of.
Oh, God.
I believe that children are the future, or are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us of how we used to be. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to include popular lyrics in every speech I give moving forwards. Although, come to think about it, We Are the Champions, My Friends, or Farewell, So Long, Auf Wiedersehen, Goodbye from Sound of Music might be nice after the May elections, as opposed to So You Win Again by Hot Chocolate or You Win Again by the Bee Gees. But I think these lyrics are particularly valid to what I want to say. Our children are the future of Reading, and indeed our future, full stop. Those of us lucky to be parents, and indeed grandparents in my case, all want the best for our children and our future generations. A key ambition of Brighter Futures is to ensure that each and every child has the best start in life, receives the best education, care, love and attention they need to grow and develop into confident, caring and responsible members of society, and to help them achieve their full potential. And this is an ambition we should all share. It's also an important reminder that we were all once children ourselves, and some of us, no names mentioned, still act as if we haven't grown up and have the same sense of humour we developed at an early age. Some of us had happy childhoods, while some may not have been so fortunate. But we've all experienced things at that age, such as the pain of being bullied or not being part of the in-crowd, the pangs of first love, or feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders and worrying about things that now, as adults, we know we're really nothing to be worried about.
Councillor Robinson, I really want to hear more, but it is time.
I am coming to a close, don't worry. So my thought is to say that occasionally we as adults and councillors need to look at things from a child's perspective, go back in time when we were that age and better advise children. I know this speech has been somewhat different from the norm, but in terms of the budget itself, I'm happy with what is proposed. As a councillor from the party that takes
Thank you, Councillor Robinson.
No problem. Okay.
Thank you. I do have to be fair to every councillor, however amusing and serious as well their speech is. Thank you. I now have Councillor Rowland to speak. You may or may not wish to use song lyrics.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In support of this year's budget this evening, I'd like to put on record my deepest thanks for the work done within my brief and officers in both the cultural arena and in our parks and open spaces who deliver so many positives for the well-being of Reading's residents. Throughout sustained COVID challenges, they ensured that our communities thrived by delivering accessible play and cleaner, greener open spaces. I commend officers for bolstering our economy's inclusiveness by celebrating Reading's remarkable diversity, such as with the wonderful new murals this year along Oxford Road. And finally, our parks teams have continued to ensure that a healthy environment is available for all our residents by enhancing our open spaces, parks, and allotments and greening throughout the borough. The cost in adult social care and the spiraling cost of materials and labor in delivering statutory services are indeed sobering, but meeting those challenges sensibly is the only way forward. As I made in the point earlier and Councillor Brock pointed out in his budget setting speech, this Labour administration continues to deliver responsibly across the authority's platform the vast range of quality product and services that our residents require. So whilst my brief may not be the largest budget set out tonight, I'm extremely proud of officers' efforts to maximize our offerings down to the penny. Whilst income loss from lost ticket sales and cancellations have taken their toll, officers found new ways of delivering quality, life-enhancing cultural activities for Reading residents, putting tangible benefits to our health and well-being. I'm delighted to remind the Chamber of a few of the highlights. Our museum reopened with enticing exhibits celebrating 50 years of Reading Festival, and just this past Monday night, the 150th anniversary of Reading Football Club. Our libraries reopened robustly, and the joyous sounds of the itsy bitsy spider from Rhyme Time's return filled the air again. Apologies, unlike Councillor Robinson, I will not take time to run through those lyrics. Libraries consulted extensively to refocus on our strategic priorities, improving our reach to underserved areas of town, providing enhanced opportunities for young people, and ensuring our libraries are as our residents wish them to be. The 900th anniversary of the Abbey, our Christmas Lights Festival, and festivals such as the Mela and others within our vibrant BAME communities gave us the chance to reconnect with each other again. The Hexagon saw the successful return of the Panto with 30,000 tickets sold. Upcoming work to the Hexagon building will itself look to respond to the climate emergency and address its carbon footprint. South Street returned back to its home with a full roster of shows. Those focusing on our special educational needs and disability children gave everyone the chance to experience culture for their benefit. Our open spaces services continue to offer great respite for residents in our parks, and rewilding and tree planting that is going on offers huge benefits in carbon reduction. This past year saw 2 additional hectares of park edges rewilded, and communities worked with the council to rewild unloved patches of land, such as off Amity Road in East Reading. Even our King Edward VII statue at the station will soon be surrounded by daisies and butterflies. As I enumerated before, our tree teams have delivered over 300 trees a year for the 2nd year in a row. Our allotments have never been more important, and this year we've been really able to dig in, increasing plot numbers and setting up self-management groups, ensuring that even in the midst of a dense urban area, we can still get back to nature and grow locally. Madam Mayor, finally, I'd like to highlight our continued investment in our playgrounds through councillor-nominated SIL-funded schemes and our capital budget to see vital improvements in the creation of exciting new play areas, incorporating elements of accessible play for children of all abilities and accesses for disabled carers. Close to £1 million this coming year will see further improvements that will benefit our neighborhoods and our communities. Both our cultural and open spaces service areas could have failed with ongoing challenges from COVID continuing this year had they not kept their eye on delivering quality first for the people of Reading. I again thank our officers for delivering the differences for Reading's residents' well-being, and I commend this budget to colleagues across the chamber tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. I now come to Councillor Page.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I first of all put on record my thanks to all the council staff who have responded to the challenges over the last few weeks, and particularly in the last few days following the emergencies and all the trees that are down, the damage that's been done in the town, and the phenomenal work that our highways, parks, maintenance and other staff have delivered. Can I firstly take issue with Councillor Mitchell, congratulate him on a reasonable attempt to defend the indefensible. But if you had the privilege of meeting, as I do, and Councillor Brock, with Conservative local government leaders, you would know how incandescent they are about how their prospects in May are being undermined by a venal and corrupt national government, as well as pulling the financial plug on their authorities and this authority. And you might be grateful for a few hundreds of thousands of grants that you listed earlier, but they in no way make up for the near £500 million of revenue support grant that this authority has lost since the coalition came to power. And if you look at page 49 of your budget papers, you will see revenue support grant identified in the middle of the income, barely 2 million, just over 2 million. Do you know what that figure was when Cameron took office? It was over £65 million, and it's been cut year after year after year. We've had to manage those cuts. Some efficiencies don't always get delivered through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Baldeston, but we always come back, we always review, and we deliver a stable budget, and we keep the show on the road despite the endeavours of your wretched Conservative government that treats local government with complete contempt. And that's not a description I've given. Just listen to John Halsell, the way he slagged off your government last year. Every local government leader in the Conservative ranks at national level is saying the same thing. So I suppose I'll give you 5 out of 10 for trying to defend the indefensible. Councillor Singh, well, we're already doing it. If you take the trouble of either being a member of the SET committee, now I know you're not, so perhaps the new leader might put him on for a bit of education next year, but we are using technology, Councillor Singh. If you care to look at a report that went to SEP committee in March of last year, and there'll be a further one coming in a few weeks' time updating. There's reference to all the technology that we use. And we've got some lovely acronyms that go with it. SCRIM, do you know what that is? Sideways Force Coefficient Routine Investigation Machine. If that ain't technology, I don't know what it is. We use scanner surveys, also technology. Now, if you or a colleague took the trouble to phone up Sam Sheen is his name, he will give you a briefing like no briefing. We've had them at Traffic Management Sub. They're entertaining, but they're also informative. And you wouldn't, therefore, have been able to, if you'd had that briefing, you wouldn't have come out with the stuff you've come out with this evening. And let me just pick up on all this nonsense about joint ventures. Every time local government discovers a new way of delivering income, your government stops it. There's 3 letters, 3 initials, MRP being one of the more recent ones. You might want to talk to Jackie Yates about that. But when Conservative councils bought property, in the case of Spelthorne, Conservative controlled nearly £1 billion worth of property they invested in order to deliver a rental stream. What happened? The Treasury decided, your ministers, your party decided, don't like it, so we're going to stop it. And so further restrictions were introduced. Every time local government innovates, your lot nationally stop it. So don't come here with all the drivel about we're going to do things differently. Your government won't let you, and they won't let us. So do a bit more research, Councillor Singh, before you come to us with these half-baked notions of how you're going to do things differently. You ain't, because you won't be allowed to by your own party. Madam Mayor, I would just conclude by reminding colleagues on the environment front, and I noticed that Councillor White didn't mention it, we got an award. We're one of the best authorities, not only in this country, but in Europe. We're one of the top 11 authorities given an accolade for the work that we're doing on climate change. We're leading by example, we're doing it, and I challenge you to do better.
Thank you, Councillor Page. I now turn to Councillor Rynn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd first like to thank the housing team, headed up by Zelda Wolf, for their dedication and hard work. It can't be easy with the abuse they receive, but they are a great team. One of the good things the team brought forward was providing modular homes, 40 modular homes for people who were sleeping rough. They will be given professional help to help them back into society. At the end of January, the number of families on the housing waiting list is 4,650. The council has a monumental task, as there are only between 350 and 400 houses due to be built by 2026. The council have 5,600 properties to look after, with a budget of 34 million over 5 years to update the properties with triple glazing, heating systems, etc. At the end of January, there were 196 families in temporary accommodation. The average time for families in temporary accommodation is 9.6 months. It would be much better to get these families into permanent accommodation, which is a very big ask. The criteria for being on housing list is you must live in the borough for 3 years. We feel it should be longer, and the people born and brought up in the town should be priority. Reading is a popular place for people to move to, so housing is a problem. But these people cannot be expected to be given housing over the residents of Reading. The government has awarded Reading Borough Council £25,000 to assist in the planning of regeneration of the council's housing stock. People who cause antisocial behaviour can be evicted and not allowed another council property for 5 to 10 years. As a victim of antisocial behaviour, I would personally encourage not to allow these people apply for housing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rynn. I have Councillor McNarney, and I don't see any other indications. So if anyone is intending to indicate, could they do so during this speech?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not really into budgets, to be quite frank. I think it's really sad that we have to keep talking about how we spend public money. And I'm disappointed that the residents of Reading were going to have to incur a further tax increase. I always believe that less is more. I believe that if you give the public the feeling that they're getting value for money, you increase the productivity and income, which equals profit. Families who would like to take their children out for a day trip often find it too expensive. An average family of 4 could very easily spend £150 on a day out, whether it's a cinema, bowling, game, pantomime or fun fair. Many times the entrance fees are so high the only way they can reduce the cost for the day is by taking food and drink, which in many places you're not allowed. In the last months, I've received lots of complaints that Reading does not have affordable things for families to do. The Winter Wonderland was an expensive and very poorly designed and likened to a fairground. Even with reduced tickets, the cost is still beyond many families, which disproportionate and amounts to financial discrimination. Remembering, less is more. What I'm suggesting will be to some controversial. However, I believe it's worth thinking about. Reducing parking fees and bus fares to attract more people to the town. Also, during my years of travelling in countries where the divide from the very rich, working class and the poor, the cost of entertainment was based on the postcode. Where the postcode indicated a more affluent standard of living, they would pay the full price for the entertainment, such as amusement parks, gyms, and other entertainment. The postcode for the less influential would get a substantial reduction. This gave way for everyone to participate. Some reductions was as high as 50% in entry fees to parks and sports venues. They received exact the same service as those of the full amount. And the best thing about this, those paying the full price never complained and supported the scheme. What were the benefits? Children got the experience, something wonderful, kept children off the streets and away from street gangs. It gave families the affordability for a day out together. Venues benefited financially, offsetting the cheaper tickets on their tax returns and having a virtual full house even in the down seasons. Reading can take credit that they have replaced many children's parks, and I'd like to thank Councillor Rowland for that. She's worked very hard on that. It's a place where children can enjoy a day out with concurring cost to parents. However, parks are often geared up for the younger age groups, and many parks indicated that over the age of 12 are not allowed to use it. So we have an age gap that needs to be filled. Very often this group are targeted by drug dealers. They frequently hang around car parks, alleyways. They're enticed with promises of expensive trainers or easy money. Once in the drug pushers' grips, youngsters are being introduced to drugs, which leads to crime and even death. Young people need to be stimulated. They need excitement and somewhere where they can grow into being responsible adults with freedom to enjoy life. There's canoeing clubs and swimming clubs. However, it costs money. There are groups such as the Sea Cadets, Scouts, and in Tylus, the Youth Club, which I fully support. This is funded by various charities and a small fee paid by those attending. They all do a great job. But these organisations cannot do it without public funding. Youth clubs require investments and trained volunteers to help run them. I would like to see a budget that invests in young people, helping them to stay away from drugs and criminal activity. A budget that would forward youth clubs and leaders. It would be worthy to investigate if Reading Council have looked at the Duke of Edinburgh award schemes, which I know Wokingham Council have proved to be very successful. The engagement with local skilled business people such as plumbers, electricians and carpenters who might be willing to teach young people life skills and keeping them off the streets. The benefit for those companies taking part, free advertisements and a recognition award from Reading Council. I carried out some research with young people, 13 to 16-year-old, 60 children in all. I asked if given a choice of out-of-home entertainment, what would help keep them away from drugs and the crime. Answers: free admission to a hub for computer games, joining football clubs, skate parks, motorbike rally, cycling tracks, adventure park with road
Thank you,
swings.
Councillor Magnani. Could you sum up your comments?
Yeah. I have spoken about the young people, but we also need to look at our senior citizens. And I'm sorry to say that the indoor bowling was cancelled from the River
Councillor
Mead.
Magnani, could you sum up?
Yeah, thank you. It's the duty of this council to ensure that every family, regardless of status, receives value for money. Are we really getting value for money? Are you willing to take on board less is more? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magnani. I have Councillor Cornell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure I can be as entertaining as my colleague, Councillor Robinson, but I shall do my bit. This has been a tough year for schools, having to catch up after COVID. And it's only right at this time that we say a big thank you to all the teachers and school staff for their hard work. And thank you to all the council officers who've supported them through this time. Councillor Pearce was right to highlight the new school places coming on stream in the future, and we within the Conservative group have always supported these schemes. A big drain on the education budget is the top-up costs for the out-of-county placements for children with SEND. So it's good to see the increase in local placements rolling out. It's a pity some of those places are over a year away, but it will start to address the deficit. I do notice that for this year and next, the anticipated year-end position is worse than originally planned. Fortunately, the Conservative government has recognised there is a problem and is looking at future funding. I look forward to hearing the government's solution. Recently, the government published guidelines on keeping political bias out of the classroom. Will there be any additional funding needed to adhere to these guidelines? Councillor Brock rightly highlighted the council's recent survey, and what he failed to mention was only 55% of respondents were happy with the Reading schools. I wonder why the other 45 are dissatisfied. Reading does have a lot of schools ranked as good by Ofsted, but good is the second tier. Not dissimilar to Reading Football Club, currently in the second tier of the Football League. I'm sure Councillor Pearce certainly wouldn't want to see them relegated, I certainly don't, but really we would like to see them promoted to the Premiership. And where is the plan to see Reading schools move up to the top tier, where schools are regularly rated as outstanding? Good is good, but is it good enough? Our children, our young adults deserve the best we can give them, the best start we can deliver. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cornell. And I believe that's everyone who has indicated. So I would like Councillor Brock to sum up the debate.
Thank you kindly, Madam Mayor. I shall try to be brief. So, I mean, in the nearly 3 years I've been leader, I think we've seen the Greens for what they really are. They used to wear a veneer of anti-austerity, but in truth, they've proven themselves time and time again to be anti-council housing, anti-development, anti-growth, anti-public transport. And my goodness, one of them once voted against a playground fence for a primary school. I mean, so convinced of their self-righteousness that they do not bat an eye at constructing a half-baked scheme that will make a financial transfer from the council to private sector landlords. In short, Madam Mayor, the Greens are nothing more than an East Reading Tribute Act to parish council Toryism. So we may as well focus on the real deal. So I was very much looking forward to a new sparring partner in Councillor Minchell. 5 out of 10, it's a reasonable assessment from Councillor Page. I'm sure one day we'll be in the same weight class, but I love a rapid climber too. But I was perplexed at times. I mean, I will tell Councillor Mitchell what has generated inequality around this town. It's 12 years of a Tory government's ineptitude and austerity. And I'm grateful to Councillor Carnell at the death, reminding me that his own government has failed to deliver on time the build of an SEND school for children in Reading. So contributing again and again to these entrenched issues. But I was also, I suppose, interested to hear Councillor Mitchell's comment on council tax. And I'm left, I suppose, confused that if the Reading Tories don't want to put up council tax, then why does the Tory government insist on paying for adult social care through a precept? Perhaps it's just an intellectual disagreement he has locally with his national party. So let's focus instead on his comments around the budget. He accused us of proposing and providing jam today, but then he went on to lay out his own jam. And indeed, that's only a small part of it, because in an article in Reading Today, Councillor Mitchell made, well, I got to £1 million of unfunded spending commitments, but that was only one of the commitments. I couldn't be bothered to cost the rest because I'd already taken the budget into deficit. So what is the solution to this if Councillor Mitchell is proposing that the council should instead profligately spend and spend in an unfunded and uncosted way? Well, I suppose Councillor Ballston provided the truth that the answer would have to be found by cuts, cuts, cuts. Or perhaps Councillor Singh provided the answer, dodgy joint ventures that have brought other councils around the country to their knees. Or maybe we should be reassured that Councillor Mangnani tells us that she's just not interested in budgets. And when Councillor Rinn spoke, I'm afraid I could only at times hear a bit of a whistle. I would suggest that Councillor Robinson, actually, so nice he has been this evening, may wish to watch over both of his shoulders on the way out of the room. But I think enough from me, Madam Mayor. I mean, clearly we have here a very sensible, robust, thought-through budget that delivers for residents around Reading, delivers in a cautious way, but an ambitious way, will make a meaningful difference and a meaningful improvement to people's lives around the town. And it is something that any councillor on either side of this chamber should be proud to support. I propose that we move to the vote, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. I will indeed now put the motion to a recorded vote. When your name is called, please state whether you're for or against the motion, or indeed if you are abstaining.
Councillor David Absalom. Councillor Debs Absalom. Councillor Ayoub. Councillor Ballston. Councillor Barnett Ward. Councillor Brock. Councillor Carnell. Councillor Challenger. Councillor Davies. Councillor Eden. Councillor Emberson. Councillor Ennis. Councillor Gittings. Councillor Hacker. Councillor Hoskin. Councillor Khan. Councillor Leng. Councillor Magnani. Councillor McElroy. Councillor McGonigal. Councillor McEwen. Councillor Mitchell. Councillor McBuffer-Coles. Councillor O'Connell. Councillor Page. Councillor Pearce. Councillor Robinson. Councillor Rowland. Councillor Rinn. Councillor Singh. Councillor Skeets. Councillor Sakali. Councillor Stamford-Beale. Councillor Stevens. Councillor Terry. Councillor White. Councillor Whittam. Councillor Josh Williams. Councillor Rose Williams. Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, councillors. That motion is carried and the budget is passed. However, our council meeting is not passed. We have 3 more items on the agenda, and we now move to item 12, the external auditor appointment process for financial years 2023-24 to 2027-28. Councillor McEwen, would you like to move?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a procedural report. The report details the recommendation made by Audit and Governance Committee on 25th of January 2022 that the Council accepts a public sector audit appointments invitation to opt into the sector-led option for the appointments of an external auditors to principal local governments and police bodies for the 5 financial years from 1st of April 2023. I move the report as printed.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Brock to second.
Second and reserve, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Mitchell.
Just to say that we will be supporting this evening, given the comments I made earlier about getting our accounts in order. Anything that leads to that process being conducted successfully in future, we will back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Does anyone else wish to speak? In that case, Councillor Brock, do you wish to exercise your right?
No.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. Succinct. Councillor McEwen, do you wish to sum up?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I move as printed. Thank you.
Well, I think that we've gone from we're ready to vote, and we do not need a recorded vote for this one. So those who are in favour, please show. I believe that may be unanimous, but is there anybody against that I've missed? Any abstentions? No, in that case, that is carried unanimously. We now move on to item 13, polling district boundaries. Councillor Brock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, fairly straightforward. Firstly, to thank all of the councillors who sit on the cross-party working group that looked at this report in advance, and also to thank all of the councillors who fed into the process as the returning officer was going through. I think a very reasonable set of proposals, and of course, things that can be refined, changed over time, but I think it's a good set of polling districts that allows electors the best and easiest access to a polling station near them. So very happy to move as printed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. Councillor Page, do you wish to second? Thank you. Are there any other indications? No? Oh, Councillor Page, you may exercise your right, but no. Councillor Brock, I mean, you can sum yourself up. Okay. Well, I will note that Whitley has the most polling stations, but all those in favour wish to show? Okay. Any against? And any abstentions? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We then come to item 14, the freedom of the borough. Councillor Brock to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is, again, a fairly straightforward report, I think, and colleagues will have had plenty of time to read it, that simply tries to take the process that we have for creating freemen and codify it much better. I think that's important because it allows us an opportunity to properly consider any nominations that come forward, to properly recognise individuals and organisations around our town with an award of freedom of the Borough of Reading. It also seeks to codify the process for the creation of honorary aldermen and alderwomen, which is not one that we have used so far, but is a power that the council has under the 72 Local Government Act. And I think it's quite right and appropriate that we would consider ways in which we may wish to honour retiring councillors as well, or councillors who have retired in the past. And I think there should be a separation between freedom of the borough as a non-political award and the status of being an honorary alderman as something that recognises political service. It's all fairly straightforward, I would think, Madam Mayor, and I move as printed.
Thank you. Councillor Page, seconded and reserved. Anyone else wish to speak? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell.
Simply to endorse Councillor Brock's comments and to say that we very much welcome the creation of the honorary alderwomen posts in this sense. We are a party of heritage and tradition, and we feel that would be something that would be valuable for those who have eminent political service across the parties over the years in council. So we will be supporting tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Page, do you wish to speak? Okay. In that case, Councillor Brock, do you wish to sum up?
Only to point out, Madam Mayor, that Councillor Page will, of course, remember the original aldermanic bench. But other than that, I suggest we proceed to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Brock. All those in favour, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That does conclude our business for this evening. I thank you for your attendance and indeed your stamina tonight, and I ask you to take your time in leaving the auditorium. Thank you.